Hello and welcome to the From the Spirit World podcast, a legendary Avatar: The Last Airbender and the Legend of Korra podcast for overlyanimated.com. This is the FTSW rewatch, the definitive Avatar fans rewatch from the biggest Avatar fans you know. We'll be reflecting on Avatar and Korra almost 20 years later after being huge fans of the show while it originally aired. I am your host, Dylan, and today I'm joined by Delaney
Hey y'all.
and Beatriz.
Hello.
We are here in the book two of the FTSW rewatch. We'll be going through Avatar season two, 3 episodes at a time every week. Search for From the Spirit World or Overly Animated anywhere to subscribe to either feed or our dedicated FTSW rewatch feed to get all of these podcasts. We are also on video. You can go to youtube.com/overly animated to watch the video version of this, but it's just fine if you are listening to the audio only. Delaney has Appa, which we'll get much into here. And Beatriz just has Azula from the comics picture, which we'll get into in a second. And I have a less good Appa up there. That's all you're missing on the video. We'll be
I
in
have
full
the
spoiler.
OG.
The OG Appa? Okay. We'll be in full spoiler territory for all of Avatar and Korra throughout this rewatch, regardless of what episodes are being discussed in the podcast. So be warned for spoilers for all of Avatar and
Been
Korra.
20 years,
Send us.
y'all. Like, get with it.
Send us your comments and questions to read on the upcoming podcast at overlyanimated.com. We are up to the library, the desert, and the Serpent's Pass here on book two of the rewatch. That is episodes 10, 11, and 12 of book two. We are not talking
Halfway.
about. Yep. Getting over halfway here. Very exciting. Not talking about the drill. We'll get into that next podcast and kind of the grouping of the episodes. But going to talk everything from this podcast, memories of the Avatar fandom. You know the drill by now. Okay. Now noting, going to make drill puns next podcast. Okay.
Oh,
Before we get into that, though, we have Beatriz here for the first time. Beatriz was not on From the Spirit World as a co-host, but was an overly animated co-host. We'll be making a guest appearance here. So welcome, Beatriz, to the rewatch here.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you.
what is I guess to start off, as I ask everyone to start with, kind of like what's your when were you watching Avatar originally? What's your kind of history with Avatar and Korra? What do the shows mean to you? If memory serves, I knew you from the Korra fandom before Overly Animated from Tumblr.
Yes, I
LOL.
think so.
LOL.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. Yeah, definitely the Korra fandom.
So we were Tumblr mutuals.
Yes,
Even
we
before
were
any.
Tumblr moots when
LOL, Tumblr.
we were oomfies.
Oh no! Oh no!
Oh, God. Ooh.
So I knew you were in the weeds of. I know you're in the weeds of Korra, but I don't know that I know your history with the Avatar.
Yeah. I mean, I was of like we're me, Dylan are the same age, so I was watching it on Nickelodeon like everybody else. You know, I was watching it as it was airing. I still remember like how I felt after watching like the finale. Like I still have a very visceral like memory just of emotions of how I was just so of all the things. So yeah, that was like Avatar. I wasn't super duper in fandom, or rather, at
I
least
was
in
in the
Avatar
wars.
fandom.
I was in the
Uh,
trenches, man.
like I think at that point this is more history of me and fandom than really me and Avatar, but I was like I loved Avatar. It was absolutely like sometimes I see people like compare Avatar, like for a good generation of people, Avatar was their Star Wars. A lot of people like made that comparison that they were kids as this thing was airing, and it was like very indicative of their like taste and whatever, and informative for them. And that was very much my relationship to it. But I didn't really get into I was aware of like the ship wars because I was in like some fandom spaces. I was unfortunately in the Harry Potter one. We will not talk about it.
It's okay.
And just in other stuff, I by that point I was definitely had already read like Gelfie fanfic for like The Wicked. So like, hey, so I was very much like in fandom spaces, but with Avatar, it was still I was just yeah, I wasn't I honestly I didn't even know if any like friends watched it. I was a very person. It was just very much me and my TV. That's my relationship was to it. And then it wasn't until later when I probably like rewatched it again when I was like a teen. So like maybe I was a teen when we were watching. I was like 13 when we found out that it was my birthday when 2 of these episodes aired. And I was 13 legit. So, but I was probably like a little older, like 16. I probably did another rewatch. And it was then that I was already like in like other fandoms. And that's really when I started engaging with it. So a lot of like the ship wars, all the infamous Avatar lore, fandom lore, I kind of was already in like was in the rear view mirror for me. So it was like, I was like an anthropologist watching it all being like, I see. So this is the history of this. But Korra was really where I was much more like in the fandom and stuff. And yeah, you know.
Nice.
Recently, there was the anniversary of like, you know, the We're Popping Bottles. Really was the recent anniversary of it.
We just got to the Makora We're Popping Bottles. If you don't know what that is, maybe we'll eventually get there on the rewatch. Yes, happy Korrasami.
All bisexuals were born on December 19th.
Yeah.
And Beatrice, eventually you get to Korrasami. What shipping did you partake in Avatar and Korra before that?
Taizula?
Yes.
Hi.
Taizula girly right here? I assume not while Avatar was airing, though. Or maybe yes.
While Avatar was airing, this is getting more into like the personal stuff, which is more like I didn't know who I didn't understand. Like I was deeply, deeply closeted and deeply, deeply confused. So I had a fixation on Azula. There was things I was sensing. I was like, like that, like, you know, we're not going to talk about the beach episode, but it was very much like, oh, she's acting a lot like I act around boys, which is just, how does this help me socially? I didn't know what compulsory heterosexuality was, but there was something that was piquing my interest with her. And whether that's this is not me saying that was the intent of the episode, but this is like my little 13-year-old self's interpretation of episodes, and her kind of stood out for me. And so yeah, it was very much Taizula. Like I have like a super duper old hard drive of mine of like a past computer where like I found like saved Taizula fan art on it. So you know, it's
receipts on your Taizula fandom.
Yeah.
I think we might have 2 of the biggest Taizula shippers here then, because I know Delaney.
Let's go. I do have a separate ship, which was recent. It's a recent ship because basically once the Kyoshi, I read the Kyoshi novels in like 2021, and that's made me like come back to the Avatar fandom more on like the Avatar side versus like than the Korra side. And again, super duper Taizula shipper, but I do have a crack ship that is a super crack ship of it, and I did write a fic about it.
For the characters from the Kyoshi novels?
No, for like Avatar. From Avatar.
What's the crack ship?
Azula and Yue.
Whoa.
2 princesses.
That's bananas. I
think there's just something
I was
so
like, crack
tragic.
ship, I must have heard it before. No, that's pretty out there, that one.
Good.
If you think about it, if you truly, like, it's like Azula is the sun, Yue is the moon. It's like, it's very much for me the sense of like they're soulmates, but they never met because one died before meeting the other. I think it's like super, you know, it just has all the layers of like tragedy and like whatever. It's like the red and the blue, and it's like there's this. And they're both, also, it's just like Yue is like very feminine, and Azula is does play with masculinity a bit, you know? So I just think that there's something really interesting, but it's like just a really super fun crack ship. And I don't know.
Katara and made it good. Good job.
I just think that like the moon falls in love with a princess who lost her mind is a really interesting concept. Just personally, you know.
Okay.
Yue like comes down from the sky and is like, "Girl, get a hold of yourself."
Literally, I think that we're speaking the same language. We're in the same way.
I'm tired of looking at this. Come on.
Someone recently left a comment on the fic I wrote and was just a really lovely comment because I posted that fic like years ago, and they were like, "Oh my god!" And I was like, "Oh, thank you." Anyway.
Nice, very nice. I
will say, as Taizula, like Taizula was like back then it was a slash, you know, right, yes, for slash shit. Oh man. Yep. It's
Yeah,
us. We're the
is it
fan.
not? I mean, with our terminology might have changed, but I think it's still
It's
in
femme
that
slash.
vein
It's
because
still
it's
considered
No,
femme.
it's
It's
just that's what
it's
no,
not
that's
in the
just
canon,
that yeah, that's just what like
unfortunately.
that's all gay
Well, look,
ships
we
were
don't know
slashed.
what might happen in the comics later, so we could talk. So speaking
True.
of, and
Yeah.
look, I know a lot of the characters we're talking about are not in these episodes, so that's why we're doing it in the beginning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Beatrice already talked about Azula a lot, but I think it's kind of interesting. That last I think podcast in this series, which behind the curtains was like several months ago, so yeah, keep that in mind for our
Yes.
references here. Um, is I compare we're talking about Azula, and I was comparing her to characters like Catra from Shira and the Princess of
Yeah.
Power and Jinx from
Yeah.
Arcane. And that was before Arcane season 2. So I think it's interesting now to bring in season 2 of Arcane to that comparison because Jinx, I didn't know at the time, Jinx had a very high level, like story wise redemption kind of arc
Yeah.
in Arcane season 2, similar to Catra and
Like
Shira.
I think
So
I okay, full disclosure, I haven't
Delaney had
watched
not having
Arcane,
seen Arcane,
but
yes.
I know what happens because I'm on Twitter and I'm a lesbian. So that's what happens. And I just want to say I think it'd be really cool. Like I think Azula would deserve kind of the ending that Jinx got. But
Well, yeah,
it's
right. So that's what I was going to say. I think it's interesting that Azula may be a proto Catra and Jinx in some ways.
yeah,
Maybe could have
100%.
inspired.
Yeah.
Did not get the redemption arc that those two characters get, at least
no,
within the show.
Yeah. No,
Um,
yeah, within the show. I think there are a lot of people who have like fan theories and like conspiracy theories about like the show and its ending and blah blah blah, blah all this stuff, but like I truly think like this is how the show ended. I think the show left the door open for it.
mhm.
yeah.
But I don't think there was ever going to ever be time in the show for that. So it's like I think
Honestly,
there was seeds planted, but that was like we'll
I
worry
think
about that later.
Brian will pay for what they have done. Like this is like
To Azula or
I
to
Yeah.
think
to leaving stuff open? I think you mean leaving stuff open in the show.
yeah, I think this is probably something that they like I don't know if it like I don't know if I want to call it a mistake or it's something that the fandom will have a chip on their shoulder for forever about, but like things like Azula and
I have an interesting take on the Azula, but it's certainly with
a-
Zuko's mom is what you're
and with
interested in.
Zuko's
Yeah.
mom. And
Yeah.
then because I remember watching season 3 and being really confused because the adverts couldn't get it straight. They'd be like, "This is the season finale. This is the
Yeah.
series finale." Like they would play both of them, and it was like, "Is this the end?" And then,
Yeah.
of course, we didn't get any
More to
so,
come on the end of Avatar. Was it always going to be the end? I have some behind the scenes I'll reveal in our book 3 rewatch. So more to come on that. But Beatrice, I assume your picture on the video is of Azula from the
Yeah.
most recent Azula comic. Is
Yeah.
that correct? So what
Yeah.
is I am not up to date on the Avatar. Is she in? Would you consider what the comics are doing with her to be somewhat of a redemption arc?
So here's the thing. There was a shift. So the initial author and for the comics, the initial guy did so much harm. Sorry, I'm very theory about this because he's the reason why I literally left. He's the reason why I left the Avatar fandom. I literally
To be fair, Mike in theory is overseeing the story on all the Avatar
right.
comics. So in
No,
theory,
for
it should be
sure.
coming
It's also
from him.
him. It's also him. No, for sure. Thing is, unfortunately, like I can't hate Mike and Brian too much because they did give me Korasami.
Mhm.
So it's always like, but like out of part of me is like the way that Azula has been treated post show has kind of been really horrendous. And not in the sense of like, oh, she's my favorite character. No, if you actually like lay down like all the things that have been happening, and it hurts Zuko's character. Which so for people who hate Azula, because there are a lot of people who hate Azula, people who hate Azula and whatever, but love Zuko, misogynist. Sorry, genuinely. This also hurts his character. This is a hurt to a character who's supposed to be seen as someone who's trying to heal and trying to do better and not trying to repeat the cycle of violence of his family. This is a very big harm that is being done to him and his character arc as well, because those original comics up until like I believe it was Smoke and Shadow was the one that I stopped, but then there was like one more after that. I want to say was it called Turf War? No, Turf Wars was Korra.
Yeah,
there was
Korra's
one.
Turf Wars.
It was one that took place in the North Pole, or not.
I have it right here. It's called North and South.
North and South. And And that one was, I think, the last one with him. I think his name is Gene Yang.
Yeah.
Yep. Gene Yang. Yep.
So he just did such a. I know it's also Mike, but like truly, like it went into a direction that was really harmful. Now the new writer, I think Faith something Hicks, Faith Erin Hicks. She is doing a wonderful job with the comics. She did one that was actually like a story that was serial and progressive, but at this moment, since the announcement of Avatar Studios and Nickelodeon and all that, and now that they're making these movies, so there's going to be the young adult, the adult gang movie, and then there's going to be the Solo Zuko movie that was also announced.
I don't think officially we know past.
Well, not officially, but definitely I think the gang one where they've shown that one for sure is official. That I think might be coming.
So will we see? So what are they working towards in terms of the Avatar Studios with Azula? Right. Will we see Azula in the movie?
Right. The thing is like the comics now are very limited to like single character stuff that they're not allowed to progress the characters' arcs. So they're allowed to show you the characters and like try to, in like, at least with this Azula comic is good. I think it's a good one. I think also the Suki one was really, really good. But
all right, that one.
Yeah, that one was really good. And I think for people who are fans of Azula, people who like maybe are like have conflicted feelings about her, I think this was a really good comic to like show empathy and show the empathy that Azula isn't just some crazy murderous psycho, but also just hold her accountable. I think it has this good balance, but it doesn't really move where her character arc. It sets it up so it's like it's open. It's basically, it doesn't go one way or another. She can still be open to redemption, or she could fall back and take 10-30 steps back and commit to being evil. But for now, it's like the comics are not going to be where we're going to get those answers. But this comic was a very, very, I think it was good. And it doesn't do anything new, but it was really solid.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, so it opens the door towards a potential redemption, but we're not, not necessarily committing. Okay,
it's a big deal. It's a comic that's focused on Azula, which the other comics, for the most part, they're filling in the gaps between, like, what we know happened between the end of Avatar and the beginning of Korra. That's what the majority of these comics are about. Like, North and South is about, like, repairing relations. We talk about Toph's Metal Bending Academy. There's a lot of it is really the Earth Kingdom and the Fire Nation dealing with like all that. So it's cool that there's an Azula comic. I didn't get that one for Christmas, but it's on the list. I want to have all of them.
This isn't like a spoiler, but there's literally like redemption is is a word that is dropped in the comic.
Okay.
So
that's cool.
In my opinion, I think she should be redeemed. It doesn't have to be the same redemption arc that Zuko has. Redemption arcs are multiple and various ones.
It also has to be different. Azula
has to. And it will be. She's a different character.
Yeah, she's a different character. Azula has committed like really bad things.
Yeah.
Well, let me here. I've been thinking about it as well. Okay, I said brief, but we're getting into it a lot. But it's interesting, and this continues our discussions throughout this book of Azula. And a lot of this is me grappling with Azula, a character who I might interpret differently now this go around. I think you could argue in terms of a handling by the show less successful than other characters, although still an iconic character, of course. I've been thinking about her role in the show. I think maybe she's introduced to the show as a counterbalance to Zuko. And Zuko, so I'm about to kind of lay this kind of thought and in terms of why we don't do redemption with Azula in the show out. I'm not convinced I believe this yet. I think it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Zuko is like someone from like really toxic circumstances, from like a really powerful and wealthy family who overcomes all that and is a source of good. Maybe Azula. First of all, Azula could just be like, what if Zuko wasn't banished? It could be an insight into that, and more of a straightforward interpretation. But I think like, what if Azula is also just a more realistic counterbalance to what happens to children of like really terrible people. I want to bring in Delaney Chloe from Miraculous Ladybug. I think is an interesting comparison to Zuko. Thomas, the creator of Ladybug, specifically subverted a redemption arc for Chloe and has stated that Chloe's it's supposed to be a realistic view of what happens to, like, she's like a child of really rich and bad people, at least for one of them, and also as like a good sibling, and also as a one parent that's not so bad. So it's kind of it's actually a pretty good comparison.
I mean, her father is like fully useless, so like
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah, Ursa's better than him. But
Yeah.
he's like in reality, the wealth and power like corrupts, and like this isn't how it works. People don't get those types of people don't do good and get redeemed. They're actually really bad too. And honestly, I would say Brian is comparably politically to Thomas in terms of super leftist that we see expressed. So I wonder if this kind of is intentional from Mike and Brian during Avatar. It's possible I'm overthinking how much they're getting into it at the time, but it's like, oh, Zuko is children of dictators, and they can be all right and do well too. Well, is that such a good message to be sending to children, to expect that of of these types of people in the real world? So maybe Azula is a counterbalance to that thematically. Like, actually, it doesn't. It's most of the time it might not even turn out so well. I wonder how much they're even thinking of a potential redemption arc with Azula, or if she's supposed to be more of a realistic type of person in that way, at least in terms of the show itself.
And we kind of get into it a little bit more in book 3 when we are, we're living among the children in the Fire Nation and what it's like. So like what kind of culture you grew up in and what you're taught.
Certainly there's a lot of intentionality with like
Yeah.
how her upbringing affects, and with Zuko as well.
I think I'm with you, but then I was with you, but like there's like these two elements that like cannot be ignored when talking about Azula. One of them is very overt, which is the mental illness and mental health factor of
Yes,
it all.
very
Like it's very like if the comics hadn't happened and they hadn't been so ableist about it, then maybe I would have been like, yeah, maybe, but like it's just they've kind of really put themselves in a corner here where it's like, okay, so yes, the mentally unstable child, because she was a child during the show and had the mental breakdown, gets institutionalized in a straitjacket. She's the one who gets, and like, Zuko's not treating her well. Like these kids who she keeps having these hallucinations, and these kids who've talked to spirits and who are used to hallucinations cannot put the two and two together that she's having hallucinations. This is the person that we're gonna vilify, and this is the person who is not going to be saved. There's that. And then, which is something that's more of an interpretation on my part than the actual clearness of the show and the comics, is the show is a little misogynistic when dealing with Azula, especially with her relationship with Iroh. Like Iroh is so patient and kind with Zuko, but with Azula he doesn't even give a hoot about. And there are multiple moments in the show where one that really just stands out to me is when they're planning. Sorry, this is season 3, but they're book 3. But they're planning the thing. And they're like, Aang asks Iroh, like, why don't you fight Ozai? You go do it. And he's like, no, a brother versus a brother is not honorable. But Zuko, you gotta go kick your sister's ass. Like, you gotta go and do that. Because for some reason, the girl who is the girl is the one who's like left behind, and then she's not. No one kind of holds her. Like, I don't know. It just, for me, especially when I was a 14-year-old who felt very like, oh, am I too much? Am I too whatever? There was just something about her, the tragedy of her, that really spoke to me. And I was just thinking like, I just don't think that the show, especially on these rewatches, they give so much grace and time for Zuko. He's allowed to, there's so many people who hold their hand out to him and allow him to make mistake after mistake after mistake and keep making the wrong choice. And yet with Azula, no one offers her that hand. And I can't help but wonder, why is it that the boy prince is the one that who's allowed to mess up, but then the princess is the one who is held accountable in a great way. That's not to say that I don't think she shouldn't be held accountable. She absolutely should. But there is also this element of like, boys are allowed to be bad boys, but girls are not allowed to be bad girls.
I don't think it's necessary. Like, I agree with everything you said, except I don't think it's presented necessarily as like misogyny in the show so much as like there's always like the theme of like Azula versus Zuko has been there like the whole time. So like it makes sense. Well, at the end they have to fight because this is also like
Oh, 100%.
this is like
But
they have to go back to the fight, like especially like when Azula like hurt Iroh, and then like we have to do this again, and that's like that. And then of course Azula does it again, where instead she's she targets Katara. As for the not reaching out, like Zuko just got lucky, honestly, with Iroh, and I do think some of that is Iroh lost a son, and so he seasons Zuko is like his replacement son.
right.
And then also, unfortunately, Azula was an evil brat the whole time, according to the show. Like, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but according to the show, what we've seen, Azula was an evil brat the whole time. And Iroh did suck. Like, he was in the army, and he was like, "You're a cute little doll," and she was like, "I hate you." So like, there's that. Now that's misogynistic that he like got her a doll, and it turns out Azula's actually like crazy, but whatever. And then like, so that's not fair, like on that part. But the thing is, like, no one was there to give Azula a chance because she never like. Unfortunately, she pushed everyone away. The only people who could have given her a chance, they did, and then she got mad at them, and so they betrayed her. Just May entirely.
Yes, but yes, and I agree with everything you're saying. But I also want to point out Iroh was this colonialist, horrible man up until his 50s, and it wasn't until his 50s this grown man had a change of heart and did the work off screen, and everyone, is like this great man. But then the 14-year-old girl is left to like, who's the only person who was ever there for her was the egotistical maniac who only used her as a weapon. So that's what I mean. There's like, she was kind of doomed from the start. And so that's why I'm like, they kind of put her in a corner.
Which we did talk about we've talked about Iroh before, and like, I think that was in a pitch podcast.
Yeah, I mean, we'll continue to talk more about Arrow. Yeah, I think it's an interesting discussion, one we'll continue to have. So far,
Azula's definitely like, if we had to pick a victim of the narrative, it's Azula.
Right. What I was just gonna say is like, so far, I just don't think Azula's like particularly handled with much nuance by the show, and from what I've seen.
No, Azula is very much like Azula gets bumped. Like they let you have like a little bit of empathy for Azula, but then they're like, nah. Like, honestly, it's really interesting what they do with the beach, and we'll talk about this more in book 3, but like you get an episode like the beach, and then like 5 episodes later, we're like, all right, let's kill her.
Yeah. And again, let me just re-emphasize that this isn't me saying she needed to be redeemed in the show. I personally don't even think the show needs any major change like in that regard. Like there was no time, and I don't expect them to be like, yeah, we should have given her more new. No, I mean, if anything, it's more like in the grander picture in comics and future works. I'm like, it's just really unfortunate that like it's not gonna land how people think it's gonna land. Like if they don't do the redemption, they have to find a way to make her have a reason to do these things that isn't a direct connection with like her upbringing and like the trauma that Ozai has left on this girl. Like, and
one
it's
of those things
it's hard.
Do we trust Mike and Brian? Because we've talked about it before. Like, we've discussed their handling of disability in the show. Do we trust them to handle mental illness? The closest we get is it would be the end of book 3 and end of book 4
with Korra.
Right, and we kind of like gloss over it.
So we'll get to it in the rewatch. So I think it'll be interesting. It's look, I think we the show aired 2005 to so I think Mike and Brian
the fact that there's girls is amazing.
Right.
Exactly.
How much? So look, I'm going to be interested to track as we continue the rewatch Azula's arc. So far, I mean, we're coming off of like the episode.
Next episode, we get Azula. So
look, we'll get more Azula to come. Last episode before this batch, we had Iroh making like Azula needs to go down type of joke. Right? Like, there's just not a lot of nuance with her so far. We'll get some in book 3, but I certainly don't remember the mental health stuff with her being particularly handled well. So I just feel like they're working from just like a very shoddy foundation of her in the show. So I don't even know what they could do with
it's very much they're like, she's crazy, but they don't like go into it at all. Like,
I just think she needs therapy. She needs therapy.
Yeah,
it might have been a better direction for the comics.
Yeah.
Also, it's like how much of
like
That's a good question. Do they have
They
therapists at what
exist.
point in the how much of Asami in Korra is a reaction to Azula and how Azula's handled? They kind of choose to Asami could
Yeah.
have been bad originally, they were thinking.
Right.
They choose to make
Oh, I
her
don't want
good
to read the
instead and
comic.
maybe
I know I
avoid a
need
lot of
to, but I
stuff.
can't handle Equalist Asami. It's gonna hurt me.
Right. So that's maybe what they're thinking originally.
Can't
Yeah,
do it.
I think it's interesting, but a lot of this post Avatar stuff, and to see how they're going to handle it with the movie is like, well, the show is just so old at this point, and like most
Yeah.
of it has aged well, but a
Honestly,
lot of it
I
is like
would
they would do
hate.
differently.
Like, I would love if there was like a villain or something they have to deal with. They're like, and they have to do like a Batman Joker. They're like, crap, we have to go talk to Azula. It's just like in the straitjacket, and like they have to like do like the whole Batman villain like interrogate.
That'd
Like,
be funny. I hope they just don't ignore Zula in the movie. I think
yes,
that's going to be tempting. I
like
think
don't
for
like just
them.
write her off or just ignore her. Like she
Let's
needs. I want to see
figure out
her.
what
I
to
don't
do.
know if
Put
they'll have
work into
time
it.
though. In the at least in this first movie, I don't think is gonna have Azula in it. Maybe
They
like
can do it.
an
They can
end
do it.
credit scene where they'll like hint at her,
So,
maybe. But like I don't
I think
know, like
you could say it about a lot of characters, I guess, that aren't the
yeah,
core. But she can show up in a scene or two. I don't know. We don't really know what
maybe.
they're doing yet. But yeah, I think no, it's all really interesting. Oh, well, the other thing I was gonna follow up and say, another aspect that they might do different for Avatar to see how it's handled in the movie will be lack of queerness in Avatar. So let's come back to that in terms of these
Yeah.
episodes because we
Give
do get
Top a
into her.
girlfriend. Oh my god. Okay.
Well, look, we got some interesting
Oh, do
stuff
you
in
want
that
to hear
regard.
another crack ship of mine?
Yes, go
Yes,
ahead.
Which is Azula and Toph.
I'm about it. Read this. Have I read this?
Like I just
There's
think it's like
probably
they
some.
I don't know. I just think that there's something really interesting about the person who's like literally a lie detector and the person
Yes,
who
I was
can
about to
lie
say the
really
same
well.
thing.
Like I
Yes.
don't know, and I just think she could like I don't know, call her Sparky or something, and Azula would hate it, but then she like grows to love it. I don't know. I think there's a potential there. There's so much
God.
potential if you think hard enough, if you think gay enough. There's always potential.
Okay, enough.
Well, you could. I mean, obviously, I'm a contender to like the end, but like Toph and Katara has potential.
I can see it.
Katov was a big that was a ship. That was a ship.
Oh yeah.
A slash ship. But by the way, Beatrice, what bending element?
For me,
Yeah.
oh gosh, it's so hard because the thing is, okay, not to be like an astrology girly, but the thing is,
Oh
like,
my God.
I'm a Cancer. Like, I also like my Chinese zodiac sign is like a water rooster. So I'm like
You're a
very and like
fire sign, I'm
my
sorry.
rising sign is a Scorpio. So it's like I already got like 2 water signs and then 1 earth sign. So I was like, I'm probably a water sign. Hello, my literal like the planet of like the quote unquote planet of the Cancers is the moon. So it makes
You're a
sense.
waterbender in the way Korra is a waterbender. You're a fire sign.
Korra-esque water
But
bending stuff.
if I were to take a quiz, I probably would be fire if I took a quiz. But I also feel like I am like I know it's like water or fire, one of the two. One of the two. Ask me on
Okay.
any day. It'll be one of the
That's
two.
interesting. Combination. And you don't usually see those two together. Um, there's something else, but I'll think of it as we go. Okay, let's get into the actual episodes here.
Oh, who's your favorite
Um,
character? Is it Azula?
Of the
all right.
OG
Avatar.
show,
Yeah,
would be Azula. Yeah, that would be my favorite.
Okay. All right.
All right, last thing. Okay, to put a bow on that, I think it was a good commentary from Beatriz on potential sexism in the handling of Azula versus Zuko.
Again, the sexism is just an interpretation. This isn't me being like they're misogynist. This is again
yeah.
my 14-year-old
Sure, well.
self feeling very upset because she
Yeah,
really
well,
related
look.
to Azula.
I mean, the show
Not
is
to
very.
be-
I mean, when you watch, I mean, they do some stuff with Katara that's not great. Like,
Well, look,
it's
that's
there.
Delaney. That's what I was about to follow up. Is like my interpretation. We've been talking about how feminism handled in Avatar and a lot of stuff ages well. A lot of the quote unquote strong female characters in quotes. But Katara's has been was very inconsistent in her, although great
Right.
stuff. I will say these 3 episodes, I do think she was kind of back to, although a lot of good content, a very traditionally feminine role in basically all her actions here, except for maybe fighting the giant serpent. Which is cool. So, is continuing to track how it's handled. It's like a lot of prominent female characters. Maybe I think they would handle them differently now. And did handle them differently in Korra, including Katara, who, I don't know, just she's on Aang's support duty for most of these episodes. It's good stuff. It's just like I that is really standing out to me how much of that there is here. We don't this in book 2 we don't have an imprisoned yet. I feel like
I do think it's a bit
I,
subser. I do think there is some. We do. What's the word? Subvert. There we go. I had the first couple letters. I do think there is some subversion when we're talking about the desert, because Katara is, she's like in charge, but she also like this would be something Sokka would normally do. Like he takes charge
okay,
and leads
I
them
like
the
that.
desert. Well, he's high on cactus juice, and so
Right.
Katara is like, "Oh my god, hands, let's
Katara
go."
has to be the leader. I like
Yeah.
that. I think they're going for that. I also think she maybe takes on the mom holding the group together role again there, but
Yes. I think
I
it's
do like that
I
she's
think
put in the
it's
leader
both, but
position.
like
Yeah.
also based on what they've been doing with Sokka, like if you would kind of expect Sokka to do it.
Right. I think like what you're saying is like totally what they're going for at the time and is totally radical for
Yeah,
2006 when the episode's airing, and now we have
right.
this additional. So that's the sort of thing. Anyway,
I do want to like part of me does have this inclination to resist this sort of like not that the mom title that Katara has isn't real, because it is. She's very much the heart, like the emotional heart of the group. She's the one who's like very much watches out for everyone. She's the mom friend, absolutely. But there like having someone be emotionally intelligent and having them be like being the mom is hard. That is also a strength. So I don't want people to take it as like, oh,
Yeah,
this is like, yes, like I don't know, like just because like she's more of like takes on this more feminine role does not make it anti-feminist. If that is, I guess, what I'm trying to
that's
say.
fair.
for sure. I agree, and I
Also,
think
somebody
it
needs to
is.
be in charge of these children. Like Toph and Aang are like 12,
Yeah, I mean,
and
if
her
anything,
brother's
I
an
just
idiot.
yeah, I mean, if anything, I just if anything, I wish there was there had been maybe even a scene where it's acknowledged that she's also a child and
Right.
that she is being
Yeah.
asked so much, just similar to how moms aren't recognized for their work.
Well, I think
And
no,
that someone could
I
recognize
think you
her
bring
for
up a good
hers.
point that there's a lot of deriding of her character in the fandom and at large, and it's because of this like, it's treated as a disservice to her character. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's part of what makes Katara so strong. Like, Katara cares.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you think, I mean, Katara keeps the whole group together the whole
Yeah.
time. Like, does all this work, and she didn't murder Toph when she probably could have, and maybe was justified. And, like, I think you bring up
Yeah.
a really good point, and I think
I know.
it has, and it's kind of that, and I think this is a discussion, at broader, people are like, what feminism is about. It's like if you want to stay at home and raise 4 kids, you can, and if you want to go to law school and be a lawyer, like you can do all of these
Without
things. Like
choice.
feminism
Without
isn't
choice.
like
Yeah.
just one
And
thing.
I think ultimately Katara makes sense as a product of in our terms like the late 1800s, like this being who she is makes complete sense and is a
Yeah.
realistic interpretation of like many women of that time and even now. So I think like
Yeah.
having more traditionally female aspect, having a character embody a lot of that, it makes sense. It works in the show. I think the criticism would just come in if they kind of revert to that too often and don't have
Yeah.
kind of any sort of other aspects to a character. They often do, so this is not 100%. I just it's constantly running through my head when they do and when they don't kind of get away from typical more Katara beats. Last thing to say is having Toph there as definitely a subversion of traditionally feminine roles.
Yeah.
I do think helps a lot too. So I think maybe they're giving some of the stuff they would have an imprisoned type episode they would have given to Katara. Toph embodies those aspects now that she's on the show. Maybe it hurts Katara's character a little, maybe not. But overall, you're still getting that sort of thing with Toph in the group now.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, let's continue. We are talking about the episodes now, so we can come back to all this discussion. And this was and this is continuing discussions we've been having so far in this rewatch. But to fully introduce the episodes, The Library, written by John O'Brien, directed by Giancarlo Volpe, The Desert, written by Tim Hedrick, directed by Lauren McMullen. I forgot The Desert was written by Tim Hedrick. That was surprising to me. The Serpent's Pass, written by Mike DiMartino and Josh Hamilton, directed by Ian Spalding. Delaney, I know you struggled a little bit rewatching these episodes. What was it like for you rewatching these?
Oh, it's horrible. They take off. Why do they take off? No.
Did you, when you were a kid watch, you hated when they got rid of Appa, and did you tap back into that emotional space here? Is that what
I
went
was
on?
bad. I was like, I don't want to do this. And I was like, is this why I like fell off a little bit in the middle? Was it because I was too devastated by the loss of Appa? Like, it was horrible. Also, I went to the Avatar concert
Yes.
and it's awesome, but they started doing like Appa's Lost Days, and I was like, I'm gonna start bawling right now. My wife is like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, horrible. So I do like the library. It's a fun episode because Wan Shi Tong's great. And you kind of like this episode's kind of weird because it's kind of like a silly episode, like it's ridiculous, but then also yeah, it's like extremely important and like we're laying the groundwork for the Day of Black Sun, which doesn't come for like 20 episodes after this. So like it's kind of crazy. Not 20, but it's a lot. There's a big gap between now and Day of Black Sun. And I don't even think I didn't even remember like when I was watching book 3 originally that like this was like the groundwork was laid here. And no, the ending is horrible. Toph is like, I'm sorry. And also we were talking about Katara. I do want to talk about there's these 3 episodes kind of highlight and they highlight some of Toph's helplessness, like the kind of the extent of her disability. Because there's a lot of Toph can't do stuff. Like Toph's like, can't help you, can't see. And we do make light of it in some cases, and then in others, it's like, well, that sucks. And then, granted, we also have Toph doing really cool stuff, like what she does in the Serpent's Pass, because Katara is like, I'm just going to part the ocean because I can do that, which is ridiculous. And then Toph is like, oh my god, I'm just going to launch this off the seabed. Like it's ridiculous. Like what they're doing right, it's ridiculous.
By the way, I guess being Moses is also a subversion of traditional female roles.
Yes,
So
Oh
I
yeah,
would say
yeah.
so. Just casually being Moses. But and also, so for example, Toph is literally holding the library up. It's a giant building.
Mm-hmm.
Now she can't save Appa, but she's holding the library up. Like
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. Like, and then granted, there's also some we can talk about. I guess it's more present in the desert, but like the representation of these are very Star Wars episodes because, as we all
Yeah.
know, Star Wars we have Tatooine, the desert planet, and which is where Luke lives. And also, so they take Appa, which is not unlike. So basically, what I don't like, the Sandbenders are like literally the Tusken Raiders. The Tusken Raiders are like the people, the like aliens who live on Tatooine. I'm only saying alien, like they live there. They're not aliens, but like they're not like people,
Yeah.
human people. And like they just yell at each other in their language you don't understand, and they have guns and they scavenge and they take things. For example, they like they like take C-3PO and R2D2 and sell them to the Jawas, and the Jawas are like, yay, we're gonna scrap you. And then of course the Sandbenders are like, we're gonna sell Appa. So I don't think that's great. Like, we get the swamp benders. Like, there's some different people that we get some culture, and like these are some, granted the swamp benders, are a little like they make fun of hillbillies for some reason. But the sandbenders, it's not great. It's not vaguely racist and just
Interesting.
not good. And also it's like they're bad. And that's the thing, they take Appa, which is like arguably maybe the worst thing that happens in the show other than killing Aang. They take Appa. Am I biased?
Emotionally for us, it's not like they kill Appa.
No, they don't kill Appa, but it's horrible. Hello,
Emotionally
and
for the
like,
audience,
okay,
and
well,
it's treated like that by the show.
it's
Yeah.
treated like that, and which is fair. I don't blame them. But that's the thing. It's this, and then it's like, so that's all we remember the Sandbenders for, and it's not even like, oh, they can like get across
Okay.
the desert. And
Delaney
no, it's
says
just they
justice for
stole Appa.
Sandbenders because it's not
Justice
like
for
they come. It's
Sandbenders.
not like they fight. They don't fight in the eclipse like the swamp, right? Like
Right.
where's our Sandbender nuance
To
here?
be
Are
fair,
they in
I did
Korra? I
not
don't.
full disclosure. I'm saying justice for the Sandbenders. I did also text Dylan. Aang should have just killed them all. Like
Yeah, I thought you were mad at the Sandbenders.
I was kind of the
Okay,
Sandbenders,
I'm
and
looking
like
up if we
I
see
also
the
texted this to
Sandbenders
my
again.
wife, and she was like, "That is completely against everything Aang is about." I'm like, "Yeah," and he still would have been justified.
Well,
Like
I think they get into that in the show.
they did.
Yeah.
Well, he kills the bug.
Yeah, I'll talk about
Yeah.
that. Okay, I Google. I'm on Avatar Wiki. Sandbender, and no, not Sandbender. Siwong tribes. Okay, we have to get into the Sandbender tribe nuances here.
Yeah, because they talk about
Um,
that in the desert, that there's like, you stole this from the whoever, and it's like,
okay,
you just found this.
Sandbender appearances: The Library of the Desert, Appa's Last Days, Legend of Korra, Long Live the Queen, No Lines. I don't remember that.
With no record. Maybe they're just standing there. I don't even know.
And then
Sorry, I'm
Rise of
distracted by her being
Kyoshi
strangled.
and Reckoning of Roku. So there's Sandbender stuff in the books. Okay, there you
Okay,
go.
interesting.
Oh
Apparently.
yeah, in the Kyoshi books. Yeah, yeah. There's time in
So
the
we do
desert.
get into Sandbenders. Yeah, I agree. They could a lot more to get into there. Okay, Beatrice, what was it like for you rewatching these 3 episodes?
So I really enjoyed most of it. I like most of the episodes. Like most of it was just like genuinely me being like, man, this is so well paced. Oh, like that writing's so tight. Look how much like look at all the world building they're doing, and it seems so effortless. Look at how they're like dropping things. Also, I forgot that in the library is that our first sighting of the lion turtles? In the
Yes.
library. Yeah, completely forgot that about the like, and that's like halfway through book 2, so that's already like things that are like seeds are being planted.
Yeah.
Also like Wang Chitong, I'm like obsessed with. I love that he's just this giant owl,
So
like
great.
such a
He's
great
great.
design. Yeah.
Great.
So and like
He who knows 10,000
voice
books.
acting, so great. It just there's the concept of that library and just I don't know. I really, also the introduction of like of like, of the solar eclipse and all that, just the way everything was, it was so, especially like the library to me was like the standout in terms of just world building and moving like the story along and pacing. It was just so well done. And then but also still having the moments to also devastate you with Appa going away and showing Toph's strength and the horrible choice Toph has to make, save her friends or save. It's like it was just such a wonderful episode. And the desert was fine. Like it was. I'm not gonna lie. Like these episodes, like Sokka is not a highlight in these episodes. Like yeah,
Right, you mean Sokka being high the whole time isn't appealing
was like
to
pretty
you?
annoying. But even speaking of Sokka, like even in Serpent's Pass, like having like the way that the shot of him and Suki with the moon in between them, so like that's like the moon being like this weight because it's like that's what's keeping him and Suki because like everything that happened with Yue, and it's just so I don't know, like it just was just a really it was really well. Also, this was like the first time we really get like the White Lotus thing
Yeah.
of it all
Yeah.
was like introduced
I
in
forgot
in these
about
3
that.
episodes. So again, this is the first I
Toph is
forgot
such
that.
a brat. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I forgot that Suki's and Sokka's like first like major kiss was in this
Yeah.
episode in Serpent's Pass. Completely forgot
Yeah.
about that.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't remember anything about Serpent's Past, and then we get a baby at the end. I was like, I had no idea what
You
was
didn't
happening
remember
the
the
whole time.
baby
I
Hope?
remember
You
the
don't remember
baby,
it?
and it hit me
So I
harder
remember
this
the
time than
baby. I didn't
before.
remember anything else.
Like I just think like Aang's emotional journey through all this is I don't know, it's just I really liked it. I also found it really,
And then he
yeah,
basically tells Katara he loves her. It was ridiculous.
essentially
We're
like it
gonna
just
talk about it.
I just think the it was so many things were like firing on all cylinders in a way that just is why this show is considered the masterpiece that it is really highlighted in these 3 episodes, even though maybe perhaps they're not like the ones that completely jump to the forefront of one's mind when thinking about the best episodes of Avatar. Even these are just like I think we're really strong.
It's like when you think
Nice.
about it, the Serpent's Pass has a lot of like character moments, and then we also have an epic battle with the sea serpent. Like there's some cool stuff.
Yeah.
So coming into these 3, these weren't like the most ones I was looking forward to, but I was really interested to revisit because I feel like originally I was not super high on these two-parters here. I guess we didn't talk about that yet, which is so I'll pause on that for a second. So Library in the Desert aired as a two-parter a few months after the previous episodes in 2006, then or a few weeks after or something, then like a month or two gap, and then The Serpent's Pass and The Drill air as The Secret of the Fire Nation. And that's the way it's listed on my Avatar Blu-ray as well. I have the original
Yeah,
Avatar
it's I
Blu-ray,
also
and
like this on Netflix. I was
it's
very
like that. That's
confused.
shocking to me that it's like that on Netflix. It's still, but they're two separate episodes. They so sure it's like a two-parter. They're created as two separate episodes. They aired them together like that. For some reason, it stayed like that on the airing and into
I'll have to
extra
check.
features.
I
I
mean,
don't.
if it's like that on your Blu-ray, I'm sure it's like that on my DVD, but I'll have to check.
Yeah, I have I have like the Blu-ray I have is many years old though, so it's I don't know if they're still doing that,
I mean,
but
I have the like OG DVDs.
I will say in the fandom at that I did not think of those two episodes as The Secret of the Fire Nation, but I do think of them as a two-parter. So, but I also think of Library in the Desert as a two-parter as well, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have a special name, I guess. Anyway, but yeah, they are together. These were like the summer uh specials. I don't know if they were thought of like they made them that way on purpose. But they do continue airing Bossing Say right after Serpent's Pass and the Drill. And we'll get into the drill next podcast. But yeah, so coming in, these weren't like the top ones I was looking forward to, but I was like pretty floored by at least the desert and the Serpent's Pass. I think there's a lot of good stuff in the library. But
The library is
did
like
not
so iconic.
there's some icon, and I think they're two-parter. I think the desert has some iconic stuff as well. I also was like never the biggest fan of the Cactus Shoe stuff, but it is pretty iconic, and we'll talk about it. But I did not remember the desert having all the kind of complexity it did with Aang's character and with the White Lotus, and so there's a lot there in the desert that so I was way higher on that episode than I was originally.
And like I forgot, like obviously I know this is what leads to Toph learning metal bending, but like those guys are after her for like ever.
Yeah, well, that's not the good part of that, but they're there
No,
too.
but they're part of the
They're part of the
for the
complexity, yeah.
White Lotus because they decide they're going to try and like
Yes, they're part of the
get
White
super
Lotus
through.
plotline. But I think I think the desert's a great character episode. Library has some great thematic stuff with like Wan Shi Tong about humans using knowledge for war. I think they could have gotten into it a lot more, but of course that's true. With a lot of
Yeah.
stuff in Avatar. It's still good, I think, what they get into. There's also good character moments in the library. Just a lot of depth to the desert I didn't remember. I think it's great. And then we get to the Serpent's Pass, and I think I just did not remember that I loved parts of this episode. But overall, I don't think I was necessarily super high on it at the time. That being said, having watched it, I think this is like such an iconic one of the best episodes of Avatar. Like it's I didn't appreciate how much the show is I agree firing on full cylinders in the Serpent's Pass and a little bit in the two episodes before as well.
They're just like launching feelings at you like as fast as possible.
It's extremely emotional episodes. Again, Aang's character arc, the previous episode into this one is pretty incredible. Just the complexity. They bring Jet and Suki back in the same episode.
Ugh.
I didn't remember that.
Ooh, Jet. I was like, ew, it's Jet. Gross.
that the Serpent's Pass thing is what sparked the Jet Zuko ship.
It's good.
Zuko
It's good.
can
Yeah,
have him disgusting.
I will say it's so Serpent's Pass is such a radical episode just because it shows the plight of refugees to a young audience. Like I feel like if this episode had dropped in 2024, people would have been crying about how woke it is.
It's true.
You know what I mean?
Honestly, this episode would be ridiculed by like
literally
conservatives in America.
I mean, the passport scene, like, oh my god.
I will say I think Avatar holistically it talks about refugees like and the plight of like people of affected by war a lot, not just this episode. It's been a recurring thing, but this is I think the preeminent kind of spotlight, the thematic spotlight for that. I totally agree. That's like a huge part of just there's just so much it could go. It's like an incredible character episode, and we have this like great showcase of like plight of refugees and what they have to go through with immigration and with all circumstances before and during this process and we Aang's character arc emotionally. We bring back two characters. This is Serpent's Pass is one of the episodes we've had a few this season where I'm like, why did they try to do all this in one episode and how did they do all this in one episode?
And they did it so successfully. Like
so the previous episodes where I've thought this were Blind Bandit and the chase, I think, where it ends with the standoff with Azula. I actually think this is the most successful one in terms of how I think not that this is necessarily the best of those 3 episodes. I would have to consult the ranking that I just adjusted. I think it's the most successful in jamming a bunch of stuff in. I think it's really well done here.
Yeah.
We deal with so much. I mean, we're talking about Aang is dealing with I mean, the loss of Appa. Sokka's like grappling with like having lost Yue, and Suki's back. They're having to go through the Serpent's Pass, and Katara's worried about
we have a whole
everybody.
epic fight
And
scene
there's a
that's really
birth
well
scene.
done.
Yeah,
There's
there's
a
a
birth
birth
scene.
scene. We have a
We
freaking baby in the episode. Like
we
it's
get
ridiculous.
world building on Katara having delivered babies, and like there's a lot that's hit on here.
And we also, I mean, we also hint at Lake Laogai. We're like, yeah, that the Fire Nation are doing something over there. They don't want anyone else to know
I
about.
think that's the drill. I think that's the drill. But yeah, we'll
No, they're crossing the lake.
Good point. I don't know. I haven't seen the episode. I haven't seen the drill yet. And I assume when they're like the Fire Nation's doing something over there, that's the thing that happens at the end. I don't know though. That's a good point.
I think it has to do with Lake Laogai.
They're crossing. I don't think that's Lake Laogai they're crossing, is it? This is when
think
people are gonna get
so.
mad at us. I think this is
Maybe.
a separate thing.
We'll find out.
Okay. I assume we're starting to hint at the drill, which is coming next, which Aang gets, and then we get a cliffhanger into the next thing. There's so much going
Yeah.
on. So anyway, Serpent's Pass, I think, is top episode of Avatar. I put it where did I put it? I put it in the great tier. So it's like just outside of the top 10 or around number 10 right now to this point. There you go. I didn't remember so much good stuff. I look back on Aang. We'll get into this. I look back on this Aang arc here a lot more positively, but that's a very personal thing, which we'll talk about soon. This episode, Serpent's Pass, also Taka origins. So there's a ton going on
The
here.
Taka just happens. Like it just starts happening.
Yeah, I do not think there was any setup before Serpent's Pass.
No, it just starts
top
happening. It's
crush.
amazing.
To be fair, I think that's maybe how crushes work for kids that age and any age could just pop up.
Also
but
because Suki just shows up. So I think Toph's like, excuse me.
it inspires the jealousy. I
Yeah,
like it. Okay.
yeah.
This really
There-
confirmed like how much of a lesbian I am because I'm like Sokka, really? This guy? Why?
I'm gonna defend Toph as someone who was 9 years old and loved Ponytail Zuko. In Toph's defense, has she ever met a boy? Probably not. So now the two
Fair.
boys she has met
Fair.
are Aang and Sokka.
Yeah, I guess she wrestled with adult men, but probably not a lot of kids her age.
Doesn't she eventually have a thing where she starts having a crush on Zuko? Is that am I making that up? We're a little bit, a little hint of that.
Explicitly.
Right, she just wants her life-changing
She wants
field
her
trip.
field trip with him.
Yeah.
By the way, we have the vacations here, which I guess is the progenitor
Oh,
of
yeah.
Yeah,
the
it's
field
yeah.
trips.
Yeah.
And in the beginning of library, I like how they're like, Aang, you've been practicing so hard every day with Toph and guitar. It's like, okay, I guess we're just skipping over all that.
Yeah.
I've been training my arrow off. Okay, yeah, okay, that happened off screen, sure.
And then I like it's like you have to work here long enough to get vacation time.
Yeah, that was good. That's good. There you go. Okay, we can get into some of the specific stuff before we maybe hit on. Let's briefly run through some of this. We talked about a lot of it, the eclipse. I wanted to just the eclipse setup in library. The only thing I wanted to mention was like the eclipse doesn't even come in until this episode, and then is only there until a season later. But in my mind, that was like the main plot of Avatar. Like, because I think the most fandom activity was after season 2 into the beginning of season 3, and that was like the main plot of the show at the time, was like trying to get ready for the invasion. So like it's almost like I don't even think of Sozin's Comet as the main plot of Avatar or as like the main timeline thing. It's
Solar
like
Cliff.
this superseded
yeah,
it for a
yeah.
whole season, and this was like the kind of crucial point of speculation of the show. So in our minds, I may be obvious, but the eclipse would be the finale of the series finale. And maybe I don't know, maybe a lot of people guessed it wouldn't be. But it's not like you're thinking they're going to do like this mid-season fake out type thing.
Yeah.
So this is, this was a huge deal, I would say, in terms of the fandom, in terms of speculation, the eclipse, the invasion. I think it drove a lot of it around this time. Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. I think it's probably set up well enough by stuff from Northern Water Tribe. And it's cool that there's like a planetarium here. But yeah, I think it's all good in the library. Anything else on the eclipse? Anything on the library on Wan Shi Tong? You guys want to
Just
talk about?
we revisit the library in Korra, right?
I'm gonna have to go back to the Avatar wiki.
I
Delaney.
want to say yes.
think we
I know
do.
that
I
the
think we
Wang
see
I know
Wei's
Wan Shi Tong's
skeleton.
there, right?
Yeah. I remember being like,
Oh,
my
do we? That? Oh, yeah, that sounds right. We see the skeleton. That sounds.
yeah,
right
we
to
see
me.
Wei's
Yeah.
body.
Yeah. Knowledge Spirits Library. What's the official name? Wan Shi Tong's library. Appearances. Okay, here's an Avatar fandom thing. I didn't like Avatar Wiki at the time. We hated Avatar Wiki, or at least I
Sure.
did.
Sure.
I don't see episodes depicted in, but yeah, Janora goes to the library. Bunny Spirit Janora. I don't. Okay, we'll get here. We'll
Okay,
get
I
here during
vaguely remember
Korra.
Bunny Spirits.
Book 2. Okay, in book,
Book
2,
two,
it
book
happens.
two.
Not the
This
not
is why
top
we
of
don't
mind
remember.
for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Book two,
Yeah.
understand.
in Korra.
I like wiped book 2 from my memory because that it makes no sense.
I will say Avatar Wiki is a lot better now. At the time, I'm like, I know more than Avatar Wiki. That was my attitude as a kid when Avatar was airing. Why is Avatar Wiki is not the definitive Avatar series? I am the definitive Avatar.
It's me.
You know, it's and Ally obviously would be the real one to go to. But
yeah.
so I think since then it's kind of like they have real names for things because they have the expanded universe, and we're starting to get more official. But they're just like assigning, names to things. Like a lot of stuff isn't named in the show, and then eventually it's like, okay, we call this city is called this because of the Avatar Extra pop up. We've talked about those, the pop ups,
Also,
or like this Nick.com game. And it's like, okay, I don't care. It wasn't in the show. Who cares about the Avatar extras? And that's what they called it on Avatar Wiki. So that all annoyed me. But now it's all kind of more. It's been a better place now. And of course, I don't remember.
Also, I'm not sure if this is Netflix's subtitles or if these are the original subtitles, but stuff is like misspelled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like Wan Shi Tong's name is misspelled. There's like a bunch of stuff that like that's not how you spell their name, or like, and I don't know if it's like Netflix because these are clearly like old subtitles. So I think they might be the original subtitles.
A lot of stuff that goes onto Netflix does maintain the subtitles from where it came from. Yeah, it's possible.
So it's
I do say it did stay down to me. They did name the desert immediately, and here like they usually don't name things, so it's like this is the Siwang Desert. They say it in the episodes. That's nice.
And I was like, oh, it has a name. I also reacted to that. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, in my mind, nothing has a name in Avatar, so
no,
it's
it doesn't.
It's Ba Sing Se Omashu. That's it.
What I really like is when they're like looking at the map. They're like, "This is how we get to Ba Sing Se," and I'm like, "This map doesn't make any sense to me. What are we looking at?" They're like, "We have to go this way," and I'm like, "I'm glad you know."
Thoughts on what's it? I don't even remember his name off the top of my head. Professor Zay. I will say there were big fans of Professor Zay at the time. I think like QB and people at DF, I think were huge fans of Professor Zay. Shout out them. I think it's kind of iconic that he stayed with the books and stuff. I think that was seen as an iconic move. But that being said,
he's a doofus.
I don't have a lot of thoughts on him otherwise. Any Professor Zay feelings?
Like, I think I feel about him like I did originally, is that he's an idiot. Like,
it's good anthropology representation, I guess, and a lot of academia.
It's really funny when he starts doing like phrenology on Aang, and then he's like,
I was like, oh no.
And he was like, what's the major agricultural project? Which is so funny. And then Aang's like, do fruit pies count? Like, that was great. That's a great interaction. The phrenology, not great, but asking Aang that question, hilarious.
Yeah, it was good. We get Sokka, I'd like to spend my vacation at the library. I think that's an iconic line. There's some good stuff.
Oh, me and my wife yell to the library like all the time.
Yeah. It's a big. I think that may be more of an original Avatar meme versus. We'll get to meme. We'll get back. We'll come back to that. But yeah, Wan Shi Tong. I think Wan Shi Tong's really cool. I feel like he's we could do more with him. Same as kind of everything else, but he looked really cool, and I do think, like I said,
he's scary when his neck gets really long, terrifying.
Yeah.
So thanks. And then he's like, he's gonna like kill Momo and put him up.
His attitude towards humans, very very interesting stuff.
I did want to go back. I guess that's jumping forward, but when Toph was like, "This is my seeing eye lemur," so funny.
Yeah, that's good. There's some good Toph stuff later too. A lot of Toph stuff here.
Or like Toph and Alpha hanging out is great.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't want to cuddle. So funny.
Yeah, that was good.
I already told you I don't want to cuddle.
How about the White Lotus origins? Again, I don't think a ton to talk about here, but we really don't get anything, I feel like, from the show from what it
No.
is and what's going on here. Iroh's a grandmaster
I
of the
don't
White
understand that
Lotus.
decision from the White Lotus. It's like I understand wanting him to be like like bring him into the fold, but to make him a grandmaster, he used to be your enemy. What are you talking about?
I
How
mean,
do
they,
you
they have
know?
they have the crazy Earth Kingdom king in there. I mean, the crazy King of
It's
Omashu
true.
in there.
It's
Like,
true.
I
It's
don't know
true.
how their thing works. Like, who knows?
I
It's true.
think the Beatriz reaction to Iroh, I think this is like again why we are needing of the Iroh miniseries show,
Yes.
outlining more of his history.
Yeah.
It's like again, how does he get from the point in the flashbacks in Zuko alone to where we see
And
him in the
also
show? We really
we're
need
also
to understand
at
that
this part
better.
in book 2 where we mention it a lot, but we don't get anything. Like he's like, I came here once before when I was a different man. Like, hello, can we get a little bit more information?
It's really like honestly, if you want to criticize Iroh, beloved character, everyone says he's handled really well, and I agree. If you want to criticize him, they a lot of times just say something vaguely about his past and don't follow up on it, right?
Yeah.
Like
It's
it's
true.
a lot of just like mysteriously outlining
It
stuff
was
that
really
happened with
funny
him.
when they're like, he's like, is there anyone from your past that doesn't want to kill you? And he's like,
That was good, yeah.
Old friends
"Hmm."
don't want to
Yeah.
attack me? Like question mark?
He's
Yeah.
like, there's one. There's probably one.
No, yeah. This is like my crack theory, which is that I think Iroh and Azula are a lot more similar than Iroh and Zuko, and it's because like I think if there is ever like I think she would similarly find a thing where it's like someone would ask her like, does none of your old friends ever not want to kill you? You know, I feel like that's something that in the future Azula would have to. Someone would ask Azula like, why does everyone want to kill her? And she's like, well. So similarly, I think her and Iroh, like their trajectories, I think are actually going to be are similar than say like Iroh and Zuko, for instance. I think that's like I don't know head canon, which is that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting.
They might
So
be more similar.
we'll see more from the White Lotus. We'll track when it comes. I am anticipating Avatar Studios to get into the White Lotus more, hoping so potentially. So I'm interested in tracking
Especially
what we're
since
doing here.
Aang basically like builds a compound and is like, we need to protect the next Avatar.
Yeah.
Yes, we get more into it in Korra and then in Korra Book 3.
Yeah. Sorry, continue.
I was just gonna say, of note to me, I forgot the White Lotus is introduced in the desert, which was written by Tim
I was
Hedrick.
shook. I was like, oh.
I didn't remember this was a Tim Hedrick addition to the show. Only reason this is notable, if you're tracking this kind of meta stuff, is that watch what episodes are written by Aaron E. Haas, who doesn't come back from Korra. I think a lot of those things are less likely to come back later in the show, but it's like they purposely brought the White Lotus back. I forgot that was maybe more of a Tim invention, so that's kind of interesting to track that in that regard.
There's a really not sweet, but like a really great moment between Zuko and Iroh before the White Lotus scene starts, which is Zuko is basically like these filthy wanderers, and then Iroh just goes so like it's like we also look like that too. So it's like it's this like kind of it's not gentle parenting, but it's this kind of like he's just so good at helping guide this boy, right? And is just kind of like clocks his ignorance and clocks his privilege and is just like, hey, remember, like we're that too. Like, come down, Prince. We're not that different from the people around us.
It's like on in the Serpent's Pass where they're like, we're gonna go rob the captain. It's like, Zuko, do you really care? Or are you just hungry? Like,
yeah.
Yeah, and I think a great part of Zuko's arc here that we get into in Ba Sing Se and him living, like the refugees around him. So yeah, I agree. A ton of good stuff there. Okay, we'll come back to some of the more episode-specific stuff at the end. I want to talk about all the romance stuff in Serpent's Pass for sure, but I'm like, okay, we're going to talk about the Katang, but let's talk about Aang's arc first to lead up the Katang, inextricably linked to the Katang at the end, which I forgot. I think okay, well, I restrain myself. So let's talk about Aang's arc. We talked about it at the beginning. I think that I want to use this as an excuse to talk about what Aang means to me, which I've been meaning to talk about in this series. But the reason why I thought of these episodes for that is just because I think I like really didn't like Aang being angry at losing Appa when Avatar originally aired. like how Delaney reacted in the towards the beginning of that. Like, and part of me still reacts that way. Yeah, I'm just like I really didn't like it. I thought it was like maybe expressed that it was badly done. Upon revisiting, I think it's like pretty well done. Yes, it is. Sudden and maybe not super nuanced. I think it's nuanced as much as it can be, but it's very quick, of course. But I want to explain that I think that I did not like Aang being angry because Aang being so like nice and sweet meant so much to me, you know. So I kind of want to explain it along those lines. Like in retrospect, I think Aang having these emotions of anger and then grappling with trying to feel nothing and then realizing he should feel things and feel his love for everyone. I think that's so wonderful. And I relate to that a lot. And I think I probably related to that a lot at the time. Um, but, you know, I think from the lens of Aang being just this like wonderful representation to me as someone who was around Aang's age watching the show. Aang was like a big role model for me. And like definitely like the most influential like fictional character I've ever in my whole life. Just seeing like growing up as a boy, seeing this boy who is like a pacifist who doesn't eat meat, who's this like wonderful like non super masculine display of while still being male. Like I think that was like very influential on my life, and I more than any other character, I think really shaped me to be who I am and was, you know, during like the later parts of the podcast into Korra into still now. You know, I just at the time I feel like not a lot of displays of like these kids who are not super masculine depictions while being men, and a
He's
lot
a
of it
proto
I
Steven.
now we have Steven and Craig, and to be honest, there's a lot now. I think that a lot of them are based on Aang.
Absolutely.
And to be honest, I think Avatar is just doing the fact that Aang is young to some extent, and a lot that Aang is like a monk, and they're trying to genuinely portray his culture. And someone Avatar, like I commented this like during season one in terms of the incredible character, but they're really good at like taking this is a character who grew up in this circumstances and really portraying them as they are, like from those circumstances. So like Aang is like from this monk culture, and they really tap into it, and so they make it very important to show the fact that he respects the sanctity of life and to the extent that he doesn't eat meat. Um, so I think maybe they're honing into that more than that it's something super important to them. Although Brian is vegan, I believe, and I'm not sure if he was during Avatar. Eventually, at some point, becomes vegan. And me, as you know, 13, 14, I stopped eating meat around 13. I don't know that it was exactly because of Avatar. I don't know at what point in the show it becomes super clear Aang doesn't eat meat. It's not like so prominent.
Right.
But it definitely like reinforced it in my mind, and like I definitely had these views already, but it definitely like
It
really
was
uh
book three, maybe, is the real reason I remember him being like, I don't
it
eat meat.
maybe it comes more prominent. They mention it I think in at some book one episode at the very
I
least.
think I think they
But it's
mentioned it in Omashu.
and yeah, it's maybe in a few actually yeah, no Mashi, maybe in a few episodes. So but honestly I credit Aang with that like me sticking with that, and to this day haven't eaten meat since then. So I think Aang is really important to me there, and really important just as this like emotive non, you know, toxic masculine, but also non just like macho masculine type of and pacifist as well. A lot of my traits I really think Aang's super influential there, and so it really means a ton to me the depiction in the show. I think it was very radical at the time, and you know, so that's why maybe any way the show goes away from Aang being the sweet boy, I think I react negatively. So Aang being angry here, although honestly, it's better that they tap into that side of him and have him go back to his core. I think it's really wonderful. Also,
I
this
think
this
this
is
is
maybe
this is
go ahead.
the I think this is kind of also like hinting at what we're going to struggle with later with Katara with when he unlocks his chakras.
I have a similar reaction to well, okay, and I have a similar reaction to Katara threatening to kill Zuko in book three. So I think that's interesting too. Um, this is also why I maybe had a negative reaction to them giving Aang like making him big and having a beard in Korra. I'm like, this isn't the Aang that
I am
is so meaningful to
anti-beard. I'm
me.
not anti him being tall. I liked that.
I think it, yeah. Um, I'm anti-beard still, so I will say I hope he's more looks more like in the show than in Korra than in the movie. This is we'll see about that. Anyway, but and yeah, in retrospect, evaluating this arc, I do think it's this very wonderful display of him tapping into side that goes against who he grows up as. Particularly, like we mentioned, the scene where he shoots down the buzzard wasp. It's so well done. It gets this like super dramatic note when it happens, and it's like in any other show, even in this show, even in we cut to Katara leading Toph to shoot them down. It's not a big deal. It's just these like little insects, right? Or they're big insects. It's not a big deal, but the show treats it like a big deal because it's a big deal to Aang. I think that's so well done.
And they even give a moment for Momo to be like, "Wow."
Momo's like,
Momo's
wow.
like, "Whoa."
And then Aang destroys the Sandbender boats and threatens them, right? Like that's so out of
I
character
mean,
for him.
if
And
Katara hadn't stopped him, he probably would have killed them all.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if he would kill them all, but Qatar helps him get back
I mean,
to.
also, I mean, that is kind of like the Avatar state is very much like we're gonna kill them all.
Oh, in the Avatar state,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, he's
That's
not
what I
really in
meant. That's what I
control of
meant.
that.
Aang,
Yeah,
Aang, no. Avatar state,
Avatar
yeah.
state, yeah,
Avatar
and
State definitely would not have.
he's not really in
yeah.
control of it. So, and Katara really helping him get back to who he is. I forgot about the Katang hug at the end of the
So
desert,
good.
at least that it's at this moment. It's
So
so
good.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And I, hugging him out of the Avatar state, and then what we get into in Serpent's Pass with. He's trying to feel nothing now, so he doesn't feel angry and hurt people. And then Katara, helping him say, and at the end, Aang says, "I was running away from my feelings, seeing this family together." Let's say his line as we transition to the Katang discussion. So full of happiness and love, it's reminded me how I feel about Appa and how I feel about you.
Wow.
First of all, this was a big line. Now that I remember, this was a big line in the Katang streets. This was
The Katang
this
street.
was a this was like, oh, Aang says he loves Katara. This was I think we quoted this a lot probably. I
Yeah, like,
remember this
with Appa
vividly
Katara,
now.
that's a big deal. Like, he just totally killed those. He was gonna kill those people for Appa. Like,
I
Yeah.
think it was so powerful. For me, it's funny because like that line didn't even like register to me because for me the big, I guess like Katang moment for me was the fact that she didn't run away when he started in the state.
Yeah.
Like everyone, like Sokka,
Yeah.
Top, everyone was like, "Get out! There's no way! There's no way! This is all gonna go real bad. We're all in danger." And her expression of just pain and something that I had written down was that like she knows loss so intimately and she's had to keep going in a way that I feel I don't know, it's unfair to say it about Sokka, but because she's kind of had to take on this role of like the mother figure, she's just kind of had to, she knows what it's like, that it's like it's not fair to lose someone, but you have to keep going. And then her so intimately understanding Aang's pain and anger and not being scared of it, I think was just so powerful to me. It was just.
I was like, I don't even think it's so much
That's
Katara's familiarity with pain, so much as Katara is the most familiar with Aang. And like, I think it really speaks to how Katara has to keep reminding them, like, you know, Appa isn't just like Aang's pet.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, honestly, they're the last of their kind in the world. Like, they only have each other, and so I think for me, that's what's really is like Katara, and she has to be like, can y'all like be nice for 2 seconds? Like, oh my god, and so like Katara is really the only one who kind of treats this as the big deal that it is, and like understands the pain, like understands how much Aang is hurting.
Yeah, but still, but I also love that she doesn't get lost and she's still like, we got to keep moving. We have to move forward. We have to survive in order to look for Opera. The balance that they struck in her her sensitivity to the situation, but also her resilience and her resolve in keeping everyone moving and keeping everyone going, I think was just Katara was very much a highlight of these few episodes.
Yeah, I agree, and definitely the desert, and then and Serpent's Pass as well. And the scene of them at when Aang rejects Katara's hug and her concern at night. That's a beautiful scene, devastating but beautiful. The corresponding Sokka Sugi scene is also really beautiful.
Or juxtaposition, shipping,
great parallel.
And then at the end, the scene with the how I feel about you. beautiful scene with Aang and Katara again. It's really really big highlights from Katang. Also, just beautifully animated scenes in the show. Um, yeah, I think it's interesting how it's Aang and Katara's bond that helps him out of this and relating all their love together. It's like I said, I think one of the more well done ways of integrating a lot of stuff together in the show, and with the theme of hope. It's interesting. A part of me thought like, okay, to the anti Katang perspective, is it like, okay, Katara has to. The fact that Katara feelings for her are involved in getting the Avatar back on track. Maybe there's some sort of not greatness to that, with like getting Aang back to a place to save the world has to be him tapping into his feelings for Katara. There's some amount of maybe it's not, the whole like, oh, actually this isn't the most ideal setup for a relationship type of thing. But on the other hand, it's also just their personal
Argue
feelings and
it's
getting
actually
Aang personally back on track. Like how she knows he is as a person versus
Yeah.
his journey.
it wouldn't matter if it was like I argue that it's not so much Aang's feelings for Katara so much as it's Katara's feelings for Aang. Like what Beatriz was saying is Katara, she reached through to the Avatar state and brought Aang back. Like that says a lot more about Katara than it is about Aang, I think.
Yeah.
Like I think that's more so much is that it's not so much like, oh, it's because they're in love or whatever. It has more to do with like Katara cares so much about Aang.
Yeah, I think they do a good enough job tapping into. It's so striking that they use the word like how feelings and love right before that. So, but I think it's a good enough job of like centering it in terms of like personal emotional feelings, not even getting into
Yeah, it's
their future romance.
yeah.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think it's so much
Even though in the Katang fandom it's seen as that, of course.
Oh, I
But
mean, they're madly in love with each other,
I,
obviously.
and it's all tied
no,
together.
yeah.
But
I feel like if I'm looking at it from like an anti-Katang lens, the only argument that could be stated is that I don't know if Katara just yet has been explicitly shown to be attracted to Aang in that way, but that doesn't counter
really
the.
think
But
yet.
that doesn't.
Yeah.
But that's like the only thing you could argue that you could still see it as just her being the mom friend. But even then, it's like, well, like that still is like a very important person to her. Like, you know what I mean? That's still like it's if you're actively trying to see it from the anti-Katara anti-Katang lens, in my opinion. Like, you have to. Yeah, that's the only thing I could
This
see.
is Beatrice. This is a sample of the debates in the shipping war streets in circa 2006, 7, 8. This is what was happening. This exact conversation.
I was too gay to care about Katang versus
okay,
Zutara.
to be fair,
I only cared about Taizula. I'm going to be 100%.
to be fair, like they have to make these like crazy arguments because Zutarians are like delusional.
Gotcha.
This is what was happening. This was a big tentpole moment for Katang. So there you go.
True.
But yeah, just it was such beautiful scenes. I mean, it really helps this get
And
the JN
we can
animation
revisit
this episode. But
I don't know if the episode's called The General or not, but it has the General, and that's when he like
general.
they're trying to trigger Aang's Avatar state.
That was we did that already in the Avatar state, yeah. So
was that? I'm
that
sorry,
that was the season 2 premiere, yeah.
I get confused.
No, yeah, and Katara is used as kind of bait to
Right.
So yeah, that is part of this arc as well. I agree.
Sorry, I got confused where it happened.
It's okay. No, so great Katang stuff. Yeah, the hugging him out of the Avatar state in the desert. So great.
Hugging you out of the Avatar state is like my favorite Katang thing. It's like the best.
In my head, that's also how the Southern Air Temple went, but I guess it's slightly different.
It's not what happened, but like we can pretend. I don't care.
But in my head, that's what happened. Yeah,
I agree with you.
So
yes,
but oh yeah, iconic Katang scenes here. Such great stuff. How about Sukha? How about AKA George, which we've covered?
Oh yeah,
George. What do we? Any so that we get we get the scene of in the shadow of UA, which I think is a beautiful scene of Sokka not being able to kiss her at that moment, but then
he could like
later
tell her. Like I wish like obviously I'm all
my
about,
girlfriend turned into the moon.
Like,
rough
yeah.
buddy. If you just
I
said
don't know
that.
why he can't just
why
say
can't we
it.
do that?
Why
Like can we just have a conversation?
Yeah, just say like, hey, like I just went through a really rough breakup. Like I just literally a girl I
she
Yeah.
straight up
like died.
it's rough.
And it's not fair to you that I'm right now in this place. Like I don't know, if anything, I'm not gonna lie. If anything, that whole like him kissing her and her kissing him just made it to me seem like he did not like the whole Yue romance was not that deep. It wasn't like that whole
Clearly.
Okay, to be
Yeah,
fair,
it gets
is
over it pretty
very
fast.
to be
bad.
fair, is any of this really deep? Like he's like seen Suki like once, and then like he just picks up chicks wherever
All
he
of these
goes.
are very quick.
Again, I don't
All these are
understand.
quick
I don't understand. I'm too
romances.
gay to understand this. I'm too.
I understand. I'm with you. Yes.
So let's revisit our views. So we talked about this on the Netflix Avatar pods, and I think we also talked about it when we talked about Warriors of Kyoshi, that we had a pretty unfavorable view of Suki once she comes back in the show. So here's the point where she comes back in the show. We thought Suki was brought back only as Sokka's love interest, as Sokka support. And she doesn't get much of a character of her own. We didn't necessarily love Sokka and Suki as a ship. Let's revisit that. Is that what happens here? Is Suki just brought back to be Sokka's love interest?
I mean, right now, yeah, she doesn't really. I mean, other than like, I mean, the scene with Toph is worth it, like totally, like 100%. But I didn't hate this. Like, I wasn't like, ew, gross, straight. Which I'll never.
I will say, I thought Sokka and Suki are. I still think they're boring. I think they're still pretty boring.
I agree with you because like. I like Sokka, but I don't like who he is when there's a woman. Like that's how I feel about it. And I'm just like, ooh, Sokka, can you not? And it's like so embarrassing to watch. The Tang, I'm like, oh, and then Suki and Sokka, I'm like, ooh.
Sokka's romances, I think, are the more traditional male-female romance dynamics.
I think they're the traditional ones of that time period, the early 2000s. That's just how it plays to me. It's just like it's like that dynamic of like the Tom girl, like the tomboy girl, and then the guy who's like starts off misogynistic. Like it screams to me as that dynamic, which I've seen in other stuff. So it wasn't the most interesting, but I think them as characters are interesting. Together, I think it's fine. Honestly, I'm not against it or for it. I'm just like, it's there.
I will say, I don't think they do much for the romance. Like, I don't know. Katang is such a like long, slow burn, adorable, like it's amazing.
It's like they met and now they're the second episode they're together, they're kissing, right?
Yeah,
like
that's the thing. It'd be like, hello, let's look at Ladybug. Another great example of just like 10 years of suffering.
It's like if Marinette and Adrian kissed in episode 2 instead of 10 years later. Yeah.
10 years later. Yeah. It's like, like it's not the same. And so like we don't get to see like, and I do agree, like Sokka continues to grow as a character. Suki gets nothing. Like Suki's a Kyoshi warrior, and then they
let's evaluate it as we continue to go here on the rewatch. As of this episode,
is that offensive. He is absolutely used as a prop to deal with his grief.
We get one thing about the Kyoshi warriors. We've got the setup for it in Avatar Day, that they were inspired to go help out in the war, and then Suki talks about it here, and they helped the refugees here. It's part of that theme, and then they stayed and continued to help. So there is that. There's a little bit of something. Other than that, though, immediately go right to her Sokka being overprotective to her. And
so I don't want to be that person, but what is the point of Suki if she's not dressed up as a Kyoshi warrior?
It's harsh, but like there needs to maybe be more to her character.
I think honestly, my main critique with Suki in this episode is that when Sokka saves her from the falling boulder thing, I'm like, she's a trained Kyoshi warrior. True. She should be able to have the not the word is an instinct. It's like the reflexes to move out of the way. Also, given what we see of her in book 3 with like how she swings in from in the prison, all the stuff and all the crazy stuff she's able to do, she could totally handle this situation. But no, we had to set it up for Sokka to save the girl.
I don't really think Sokka really saved her. Like, I think ultimately she would have gotten out of the way. 100%. We just have to do this for Sokka's. No, what matters is Toph being like, hello.
Yeah, Toph is like, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Like,
Yeah. So look, I will say the two the two Sakasuki scenes, the almost kiss and then kiss. I think they're beautiful scenes. So I don't think it's like terrible or anything.
Yeah.
I do still think it's kind of boring and that there's not a lot to
yes.
Suki at this point. We, of course, as we mentioned earlier in the series, our kind of hatred of Suki maybe was based in some misogyny at the time because it's more like she's nothing than that. We don't. There's other characters that are also don't have a lot. There are other side
Like
characters that also don't have a
like
lot going on.
Suki is not
She's
the
not deserving of scorn, but there's still not. That doesn't mean there's not a lot.
She's
going
very
on.
much there for Sokka's growth. She's not there for her own growth or her own sake. It's like she's conveniently placed there and explained to be at the right place at the right time so that Sokka
And then,
can
like-
move on from you and just
Yeah.
be.
And like,
yeah.
what do
Yeah.
we do with her? She gets like beat up and replaced, and then we have to go rescue her.
Yeah.
They certainly could have done more with her. I think it's a consequence of them having a lot
Yeah.
going on and not prioritizing Sue, which probably is the
Yeah.
right decision not to prioritize her character arc.
Yeah.
It's not as important as other things
Yeah,
going on.
like
you know,
if
so.
Toph, Katara, Azula, Ty Lee, May, if none of them existed, it was just Suki and that's all we got, this would be a problem. But there are a lot of other female characters that just take, there are more, they do more
Like,
interesting
Ty
things.
Lee- Like, I mean, Ty Lee and May are ultimately more important because of like the role they play in the story.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's one of those things where it's like she's just, it's just the short end of the stick. She's just there to be his romantic interest.
The problem is Suki is so cool, there isn't anything to do with her.
Exactly. She's already done. There's no need for character growth. She's done her stuff.
It's true. It's true.
She's already good.
Like she's a
Yeah.
Kyoshi warrior, and she's like, I like Mint. She goes on a Wonder Woman adventure, and she's done. Like she's just out there being Wonder Woman. She's got nothing else to do.
We'll see. Will we see Suki in the movie? We'll come back to this
I
question. That's
don't
interesting.
know.
Absolutely.
Ooh, this is a cool, interesting question because I saw someone ask this on Tumblr way back when I was like getting back into the Avatar fandom. Would you consider Suki part of the gang?
No.
I would say no. She is in this episode, right? She's part of the, but she goes away again.
So here's like, okay, so like,
we'll see when she comes back in book 3. How many
okay, but
episodes
like the
is,
gang.
is
So like
she-
the gang is Toph, Sokka, Katara, Aang. But like,
And
do we
like,
also
I'm talking about
include
that Zuko. Like, consider this like end of the show, just in
Zuko,
general.
Zuko joins
yeah,
the gang.
Zuko's part of
yeah.
the gang. It's like by the end of the show, like the last shot is of them, like the gang, Suki, and I think May is also there. So I'm just like,
No.
No. So
they're not
May and Suki they're not like part of the main
they're
sitcom
just the
friend group. They're just the
girlfriends.
girlfriends.
That's
they're
what I mean, and
girlfriends.
that's
they're
the
not
problem.
really.
That's
they're not the. Yeah.
May has
exactly.
more to do. May is more interesting than Suki. So this isn't me. This is a rag on it, but like that's the issue at the end of the day.
She is kind of. It's a good point though. She is also kind of the
Interestingly,
girlfriend.
May
now.
and Suki get stuff to do in the comics.
Yes, they do. They do. I mean, I have
that's
thoughts about May's the things that May does because I think she takes way too passive of a role in the comics, but that's a topic for another day.
Okay. But yeah, I like that. It's a good way of looking at Suki. Okay, back to Taka. So we mentioned the scene where it's Toph says, as if Sokka with the boulder, and she's like, "Oh, you could have thanks Sokka," and it's like the first mention, right, of the Toph crush on Sokka.
Also, poor
And
Toph is
then-
blind and can't swim, and she is set up for failure in this scene.
Yeah.
Not at all. Poor Toph.
And then we get Toph thinks Sokka shouts he's gonna come and save Toph. It actually Suki kisses Suki on the cheek. Okay, you can let me drown now. So this is the first Taka. We'll come back to that from the queer perspective, but from Taka, this ends up being one of the big ships in the Avatar fandom. I would say the third most popular like Avatar ship. And it really doesn't come in till halfway through the show. And there's not, I mean, how many other mentions of this crush will there be? Like less than 10 probably in the entire show?
I think it's less than 10, like, period.
Less than 5 maybe?
Yeah, it's not a lot.
So, but a lot of us, I don't know, like this. I will, from a as Katanger first perspective, I think Taka is kind of like a complimentary ship for fanfic because it's like, okay,
Pair everybody
Katara and
off,
Toph are
right?
together, so Sokka,
Right.
yeah, so they can be together
I
too.
don't remember, but like, so right now, Delaney is not a Taka shipper. I have gone through multiple.
Wait, I didn't know that. Is that I didn't know that.
So that's
When did this change?
I can't tell you what the order is. But like at one point Delaney wasn't, then was, then wasn't. Like there's an order to it.
Okay, you've had a back and forth
I've had,
relationship.
like I'm not sure how I felt like originally when the show aired. I know there was a time while I was reading and writing fan fiction that I did ship Taka, and then it stopped. And most of it has to do with like Tenzin and Lin.
Right.
But then also, I just don't like. I'm not. He's too old for her. And
at the time of Avatar,
Yeah.
for sure.
yeah, I like. So at one point, I did ship Taka, not anymore, but I did at one point.
Okay.
I think I still ship Taka, and I want them in the Avatar movie, in Avatar Studios. I want them to reveal which of the kids is
Well, it can't be Lin.
is
It
Sokka's.
could be Sue. It can't be.
It can't be
but it
Lin.
could be-
Right? We want that confirmed reveal that
I think both children
they had one
results
child
of
at
one night
least.
stands, and I think
Yeah.
Pop was like, "I'm gonna have a kid," and she just like orchestrated it.
Yeah, I think that's
I think that's what
yeah.
Pop did.
I will say I did some very quick research that is not very super strong, but I went on AO3 on the Avatar tag just to look at like what are the top relationships, and Taka is not there.
It's gonna be,
Taka is not there.
Yeah,
Well, you can't use AO3 because in the time of Avatar,
it was
Sokka
fanfic.net.
and
Yes,
Zuko
you're
is
correct.
number
it was
one.
fanfic.net, and it was a very
Also,
fanfiction
AO3 is heavily weighted towards MM ships.
That is true.
So.
I will say there's only one MM ship at the top, that's number 2, and I do see Taizula at the bottom. I see they still make it in there, so there's still something in there, but yes,
I think I don't know. I know it went down for a little bit. Is fanfiction.net gone?
No, it's
just janky. It's like super. It's just not.
It's super janky.
Not great.
We talked about it at the Book One finale podcast. We talked about some fics, but I definitely, some of our From the Spirit World group love Taka. I think Sam was even more in the Taka than Katang. So we have some big Taka shippers
fans
here. It's definitely like more of a fan ship, but it's like, it's got
there's some stuff.
Foundations in this crush within the show. So it's a fun one to get into.
I do think it's a fun one.
Absolutely. There's definitely, I wouldn't even say it's subtext. There's textual stuff in the show that people can run with. People have run with less. See me with my crack chicks. People have done less.
Well,
I mean, my favorite
see Zutara for one.
Yeah, see Zutara. My favorite crack ship personally is Zuko and Aang.
Yeah, that's a good one too. We haven't gotten to the book 3 episode with them.
Yeah, the book 3 episode that is like the Zukang episode. Yes,
Zukang episode. But yeah, so we'll see how Avatar Studios handles Taka. In Korra, they chose to vaguely leave the door open as their strategy with any sort of future Taka. Obviously,
but it wasn't even like vaguely leave the door open. They just straight up don't mention.
Yeah, they don't mention him at all.
But yeah, you could argue it was intending to leave the door open, or they just, I don't know. Who knows what they're intending? But we'll see. Now that they have the whole like extended universe, and they're trying to make this like canonical through line through everything.
My question is, do they actually know who the father is,
right?
Toph and Sue, or did they were just like, meh.
So yeah, will they establish it and cement it now?
So if you'll allow me this craziness. So do you know who voices young Lin in the flashbacks in Legend of Korra? Gray Delisle, Azula's voice actress.
So is Azula the dad?
No,
is that what you're saying?
I'm like, Azula's the dad that stepped up. Azula's Lin's dad is what I'm saying.
Step to step.
Yes.
Okay. I like it.
Azula's the dad. Got it.
I like it. Okay.
That's the name of this podcast. Azula's
the dad. You're the father.
Okay. Azula's the dad. That's a good one. Okay. So, getting to we've been part 3 of who would be queer if they made Avatar today. I know some people not interested in this probably listening, but I will say there's 2 things we have to. First of all, we've been talking about this Toph Suki scene. So in previous podcasts, we suggested, what if Toph, instead of having a crush on Sokka, had a crush on Suki? And this scene where she kissed her on the cheek was actual, like, from a different perspective. That's
also, this like happens again in book 3. So like,
she kisses her again.
I don't even remember.
Well, I know doesn't Suki rescue her at the end with the blimps?
I don't know if oh,
Okay,
you
maybe
mean like the
in the
saving,
finale.
not the kissing. I was like, I don't think
Yeah,
she
the
kisses her
saving.
again. I would remember this.
No,
Right, but
it's
in general, it's
like a
like, you
repeat.
know,
Right. Yeah.
Toph already like a very like masculine presentation of a girl. What if instead
Like
of just
Toph
having
has
this
kissed
random
a
crush
girl,
on
like straight
Sokka,
up.
what if she had a crush on Suki or what some other person? So I think it's interesting
That's
to
what
think
Avatar
about.
Studios needs to do. I need Toph to have a girlfriend.
Yeah, obviously she's like 12 in the show, but you could
Yeah.
go in future
You have a
material
girlfriend, guys. Come
too.
on, give me.
Here's the interesting one. Here's the scene. Now I knew there was something with Smellerby. I did not remember
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
this scene
Yeah.
was like such
My
a like in your
non-binary
face
icon.
thing.
I can't believe
Yeah.
Smell is here binding like right now.
Let's recap the Smellerby. So in Serpent's Pass, everything that's going on, we also have this whole scene about gender with Smellerby. So Iroh says, Smellerby, that's an unusual name for a young man. Somebody says, maybe it's because I'm not a man, I'm a girl. Loud cymbal sound.
Which is like also
Um,
funny because like Smellerby is not a name.
Yeah.
Like,
Period.
maybe in this world it's a name. But no, it's a nickname, right? Yeah.
and it does not imply
I
gender.
Iroh says, now I see it's a beautiful name for a lovely girl. And then we get the scene of Longshot
Just
comforting.
standing
It's
there. Just standing there.
comforting Smeller. It's just funny to me that Smellerby and Longshot are just like such non-entities outside of like
Yes.
this and like
But
maybe
like
one or two other
this
scenes.
this is my non-binary representation. It's right here and it's
Well,
Smellerby.
so Smellerby says, as long as I'm confident in who I am, it doesn't matter what other people think. Thanks, Longshot. So we've been saying, oh, there's no like genderqueer representation in Avatar. Is this intended to be some version of that at the time in
I mean, I think
2005
it's probably
terms?
similar to Toph in like Toph's representation of gender. And
In
so
terms of like gender non-conforming,
Yeah.
yeah,
right?
gender
Like is
non-conforming. Now, my interpretation is that Smellerby is binding and is transmasculine.
okay.
And so thanks, Smellerby, my non-binary icon.
Yeah, I mean it's very easy in today's terms, and to be clear, all this stuff existed in
Yeah.
2005, just not as it prominently in media or maybe with different terms in queer community being
I
talked about.
want to say that the actor that plays Smellerby in the live action is non-binary. I want to say that maybe
Netflix
possibly
show?
in the
Yeah,
Netflix
probably.
show.
I have no
I
idea.
think
Probably.
so.
It's
There
gotta be
are
fun.
so like it's very much something that's everyone's just like aware of. It's like yeah, Smellerby.
The thing that stands out to me rewatching this episode with this scene is just how prominently placed and distinct this scene is from everything else that's happening in the episode. It's not like maybe they were just thinking we need something to do with Smellerby and Longshot. And I do think this organically could come, you could say it organically comes about character-wise because you have Iroh who's old interacting with these youngins. And so this something like this would organically come up. So, but I just feel like when they're planning out the episode, this is something that they're wanting to comment on gender. I feel like it's not like they found this. I feel like this is intentional by them.
It's also interesting when you like compare this to what we get in Tales of Ba Sing Se when Katara like forces Toph to like go to the spa and like wear a dress. So like I'm not sure, like maybe it has to do with writers on the episode or like because I would say Avatar gives you conflicting gender views. Like obviously Toph is a subversive character for 2005, 2006, but like and the Smellerby scene, I mean, honestly, I mean, if this played today, like we were talking about earlier, like people would lose their minds. Like, but then you compare it to like other scenes in the show, it's like, and like we make fun of Sokka in the dress. To be fair, I think that's more because that would upset Sokka than like anything else.
I think here my take on their handling of Toph is like Toph is like a masculine presentation of, but she's always like she's never like struggling with her identity of as being a girl. I mean, she's a child. I think this scene is notable in its intention. It's Smellerby's talking about her identity. Like it's something that's like very distinctive and like sure Smellerby's not saying I'm non-binary, I'm trans, like right, like it's just a pretty straightforward like people confuse me being a man, but I'm a girl. But like, there's like a gender introspection, identity introspection. Like literally, it's happening in the scene.
Yeah.
As long as I'm confident in who I am, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how other people think, right? Like it's such an intentional exploration of identity relating to gender. Of course, it's not getting into it maybe in how they would write it nowadays. Nowadays, they might be more explicit in giving Smellerby some sort of distinct gender identity or hinting at that. But I think certainly for 2006, but even now, even in a progressive show, this scene would stand out as a very prominent, intentional
Yeah.
thing of again getting into identity relating to gender. So I did not remember that this was so prominent or handled like this in the show. I'm not saying this is like so hugely progressive in terms of the specifics of what it's getting to, but huge props for the show for making time for this sort of identity thing. Again,
So it's
related
kind
to
of
gender. Like
interesting. It's like we talk about like what would be queer now, but then there's still stuff that like there's stuff here already.
Yeah.
this is I was gonna say
Interesting.
there's this challenges what I've been saying. Like there is no queerness in Avatar. I think you could argue this is genuinely a queer scene, even if Smellerby is not expressing in modern
Right.
terms a queer gender identity. I think this is like uh, at the very least in the realm, but I think you could argue explicitly like a scene, an exploration of queer gender representation in some form in this scene. So yeah, I'll say if you want to counter what I've been saying and say there is actually some sort of queerness in Avatar, you and also Toph kisses a girl on the cheek, even though I don't think any of us would argue that's like intended to be super gay or anything. But I think this Smellerby scene stand out to me as actual intentional either queerness or in the realm of queerness from the
Yeah.
show. Cool stuff. It's interesting that this is kind of like all we get. Maybe there's another thing coming up I forgot about, but I think this is probably all we get with
Probably.
anything in this realm.
Yeah. Anything that's like explicit, or rather, there doesn't require some sort of
Yeah.
interpretation on your part.
Yeah.
So what if they were doing Avatar now? How would this change? I think maybe they would just they might have more explicit identification or hinting at identification for Smelly, but I also think they would just make Smellerby maybe more of a character.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
like maybe we just don't have this one scene. Maybe there's some sort of follow up here related to Smellerby throughout the season, throughout Bossing Say.
Be
So,
cool if like Smellerby and Toph have like a combo or something. Cause like,
Yeah,
and then
that'd
you
be
have
cool.
a thing where it's like it could highlight like the difference, the distinction where Toph is like, no, I know who, like I'm just a masculine person, but my identity is this,
yeah.
versus Smellerby being like, well, my thing is about identity. It's about my gender versus.
Yeah,
it's funny
and
when you
maybe
think about it,
them talking like prompts Toph to think about
Yeah,
this
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
thing,
yeah.
too.
This is kind of like the journey I've gone through is like because like Toph is how I would have identified like growing up, and then I didn't realize I was gay until I was 18. Thanks, Korosami. Korosami made me gay. And then I recently this summer I had gender affirming surgery. I had top surgery. And so it's like different, like I've kind of gone more to Smellerby, like this like my expression of gender has changed. It's not so much like because I identify as non-binary and it's like I'm more transmasculine versus like just being like butch or a tomboy. So it's interesting. These two
Cool.
characters kind of
Yeah.
represent both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um yeah, and we'd love to see. I'm interested. What if they bring Smellerby back in
That would
Avatar
be
Studios
cool. That would be
stuff
really cool.
and get more into that?
Trying to
What if we
remember
get
because when we were talking about the invasion, I was trying to remember characters that come back. Obviously, Jet doesn't come back, but Pipsqueak and the Duke do. I don't remember if Longshot and Smellerby do.
couldn't we'll see
We'll
when we
find
get there.
out
It's
because
a
I know
good question.
Pipsqueak
It's a
and the
good
Duke come
question.
back. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
because they're not in this scene. Yes, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Um yeah, and maybe Avatar Studios could get more into if they wanted to get into Toph's gender, stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see what they approach here.
I also don't know
Mike
if
and
it's in
Brian
the
are going to be
future
interested.
or if it's already happened, but like Smellerby and Longshot are like kind of a thing. Like,
Oh, yeah. Where do we hint at that? I mean, other than this scene, but
no, there's another scene I thought of, but it was previous.
okay, we'll see. We'll see when it happens. Um, I would think Mike and Brian, now that they've done Korosami, I think that they would be interested in actually having some sort of gender queerness representation in Avatar Studios. And hopefully they can still approach stuff like that despite the tides changing on corporations wanting to include that stuff in media. Anyway, Beatrice, any other thoughts on any sort of like what this question of what would be queer if they made Avatar Day? Do you think that do you think Taizula would be something that would they would actually want to put in the show, like in 2024 Avatar?
I would love for that to happen. I think a lot of people who made the show, or at least like I know the voice actors are very aware of how popular that ship is. So it wouldn't surprise me that also the creators, the writers, some of them are also aware of how it's taken its whole, how it's like, I
think it humanizes it.
Yeah, I think it would, I would love for an exploration of that. I think Azula also does some interesting stuff with gender. Yes, she wears makeup, but she also wears armor, and it's like the Fire Nation, at least like in the show as we see it, it's like a bunch of old dudes and power, and then this one young girl. So I think there's some really interesting gender stuff that's done that like is explored. And I don't know, I'm fascinated. And we know from the whole thing with Korosami that we know that there is like homophobia that does exist in that world. And we at least from the Kyoshi books, I know that it wasn't until Ozai that not Ozai, sorry, Sozin, that that the homophobia starts in the Fire Nation, which funny enough, because his sister was a Sapphic. So it's like, I don't know. I think it would be something really interesting to have like, well, what if this girl who's obsessed with perfection and being like the perfect daughter for her father and for her nation that is rife with homophobia is gay? I think that would be super interesting.
Oh, what's that song? Oh, she's the song. Owl House song. It's not really the
Owl. The Amity song. Yeah.
The Amity song. Yeah, that's what it is.
I think that would be really interesting. I think that would be something that could totally be maybe not necessarily with Ty Lee. Like I don't want to like there are a lot of some people who are very anti Taizula or very like Ty Lee's been put through the ringer, she deserves someone better, all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, fine, be boring, but fine, like fine, whatever, but but I could totally see, I mean, like Ty Lee's being like pansexual is like, to me, is like a fish on water. That just makes sense to me. She's very much like someone who I don't think she has a necessary like, I think she's very like love is love. Like, I don't think she has those like limits, but definitely Azula being explored in that way. Like, I don't know, there's a reason. I feel like there's something, I don't know if it was like intentional in the show, but I do think that there's something to the fact that there's a lot of people who, who are gay, who like she spoke to in their experiences. So I don't know. I think that would be definitely something really interesting to explore. And that would
I mean, also trying to live up to like her father's ideals and being gay would, that's
it wasn't May. It was May's betrayal, but it was like, who was the one who hit her in the back and who was the one that she did not ever expect to betray her? It was Ty Lee. So I think that could be something interesting. And I won't mention things that happen in the comic, but it's like I don't know, there's some stuff there that was like, oh, this is a decision that was made. That's interesting.
Also, what's gayer than having mommy issues?
Literally, it's like mommy issues, daddy issues, all this stuff. I think there's a whole, we could have an entire conversation about their mom, about Zuko, Azula, and their mom, and the entire family dynamic that's like rife for discussion and dissection. But I think that would, like, if there's gonna be like, if we're gonna go by like ships of Last Airbender, the main queer one that actually has some like that they could put in the show would probably be Taizula. I know there's a lot of people who ship Sokka and Zuko, but like I don't see them breaking up. I don't see,
right, like what doesn't contradict any sort of existing ships or futures
exactly.
that we know about.
I think that's the only one of the queer ships that are very popular that it just kind of you could put it in there and it doesn't change the main timelines.
so easy. Just
Yeah,
keep
we don't know that Sokka and Suki are together forever, but yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll see, I guess. But yeah, no, they could just it'll be very interesting to see right away when we see the movie. What are they doing here differently than Avatar? Like, it would kind of be shocking to me if it's nothing, if there's no sort of queerness in the
That's the
movie.
thing. I'm trying not to like expect so much because I'm assuming it's going to be somewhere between 90 minutes to 2 hours. I'm assuming that's how long this movie is going to be, and that's not a lot of time. So I don't know if this movie is going to give us a lot of queerness versus, say, a potential Avatar show in the future with a new Avatar,
Yeah, any sort of
or another
miniseries or show,
a miniseries, or like again in the books, there's a bunch of queerness, but I just don't know if we're gonna get that with.
Honestly, even if it's a background character being gay, that's more than Avatar has. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
well, it's
far
like
as
it's hard,
queer
maybe
for
hard
the
to see Ty Lee and Azula having a huge role in the movie if you say that. But I mean, there'll be new characters. You're right. There'll be something. They're
Yeah.
gonna do something differently.
Yeah.
But
I'm also the opinion where I'm like, I don't care about background characters that you're never gonna see again being queer. I want if
No,
you're
I
gonna
agree
go
with
with
you.
queer, give me like an actual character.
Well, I'm just saying that like we have to go with like what we're dealing with.
Oh,
And, like,
100%.
Yes, we have Kurosami, but Avatar, there's like nothing.
No, for sure. But that's why I was like, I don't know if I'm not gonna go into the new movie being like one of them's gotta be queer. I'm going into it being like the people who I could see them maybe exploring the queerness with. I don't think are gonna be main roles in this first movie.
Yeah,
I mean, I do think it'd be really easy because one of my predictions for the movie is that we have to get the gang back together.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be really easy just to give Toph a girlfriend. We didn't even have to see her. Like,
yeah,
super easy.
Just
no,
have her flirt with a girl at a bar or something.
Or being like,
yeah,
like just literally be like, oh, she's living with her girl, like so easy.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. No,
No,
for
like,
sure, for sure.
I agree with that. I think I would be shocked if Mike and Brian do not specifically insert this in some fashion, queerness in some fashion, into what we will see in the movie. Like, I think it will be important to them, is my prediction there. And I agree, Toph is still the, which is why I've been speculating about Toph. I think Toph's kind of the, as like what Beatrice said with May and Ty Lee, like it doesn't contradict any existing things because Toph's past is so murky. She could easily be dating women at various points in her life. So I think totally. Okay. Quick hits. Anything else remaining? I did want to talk about Avatar memes briefly, just because Cactus Juice is in here. How much? I don't know how much of Sokka with the Cactus Juice is still a meme. I think maybe to some extent. I will say, it was a huge meme back in the day in the fandom.
Yeah.
So I want to say like Sokka Cactus Juice, Sokka waving at the mushroom. That was big meme in 2007. Right? Like this was like that was actual. Like we've talked about previously, the difference between Cabbage Merchant, which was a meme at the time, but is more of a meme now.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes.
Versus Foamy, who I think was a big meme at the time and is like not as much anymore.
And then also like Cabbage Merchant like is a meme in the show, which is like even funnier.
Right, but it's an intentional meme by the show.
And he's like also he makes an appearance in Serpent's Pass.
Yeah, he does.
In my mind, yes, he does. He does. Yes, we get the immigration, the security bear eating the cabbages. Yeah.
The platypus bear is eating the cabbages. So funny.
I will say, less the Sokka. I've seen the Sokka gifs for like with the cactus juice, yes, but I feel like the My Cabbages one is the one that I've really have seen permeate everywhere. Like there was a reference to it in one of my in a video game I played last year, like. Literally just like my cabbages, you know what I mean? Like it's
it has certainly become the preeminent, right? And I think it was big at the time. I'm just trying to I think it's like even bigger now.
100%.
But no,
here's what I was thinking.
It's like if people if you haven't even watched that much Avatar,
you know my cabbages.
You know the cactus juice meme.
I think that in my mind, the Sokka Cactus Juice was the biggest Avatar meme at the time, like maybe even more so than Cabbage Merchant.
Absolutely.
Like I don't know if that's true, but like at least it might have been close.
It was a better reaction meme. It's the better reaction.
The quenchy.
It was people love Sokka and the Cactus Juice. As kids, we thought it was very funny, very very funny. Okay, here's the other thing I was thinking. What's the other besides Cabbage Merchant? What's the big meme that people do of Avatar now? It is everything changed when the Fire Nation.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that was not a meme.
Was not a meme.
When Avatar was there.
That was it. Everything changed when the Fire Nation was like that was like a 2010s meme. I feel that was like height of Tumblr.
I think the children need to know that was not a meme in the show, or even a few years after. Like this is like somewhat of a, I mean, I guess
I
recent, but
think
we're old
basically
at
when
this
it
point. It's
came
been a decade,
when
but
they originally put it back on Netflix, like not this last time, but
yeah,
the time
I
before
think
that,
right,
that's when the meme happened.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. If you're looking at Avatar history, there's Korra, but there's also like there's like a year, some time period of years break after Avatar ends. Avatar was like popular, but it wasn't like culturally permeating like it is now. The origins of the cultural permeating are the first time Avatar is on Netflix. We're talking like early Netflix.
Early
Avatar's on pretty early,
and that's
and
when
then
it
it starts to
then
blow
everything
up,
changed
and
with the
then
Fire
maybe
Yeah,
then
Nation.
things
that
starts
is
to happen,
that to
and
me is
then
like peak like Tumblr time. 2010,
Yeah.
once
2011,
Tumblr starts, yeah,
2012.
once
Like
Tumblr
that's
starts to
when
blow
it
up.
was like where you would see it added to like a Tumblr post where it just goes everything changed in the Fire Nation. And then like that's yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. That was interesting in my mind. I was like, how things have changed with how Avatar is seen
Yeah.
culturally. I've because I've never watched. I've never like. I'm so anything that's not was not here during when I was in the Avatar fandom is not does not exist to me. So I've never used the everything's changed the Fire Nation attack meme. I'm like, oh, these kids, they have their own avatar. I mean, it's cool, it's fine, but yeah, we're talking about the Avatar fandom at the time. We'll think about we'll continue to track the memes, a very important Avatar fandom subject here. Any other
I
topics
also
top of
feel
your
like, oh,
guys'
your
mind
girlfriend
here?
turned to the moon. That's Rough Buddy was
Yeah,
also
that's
That's
a
Rough
Rough Buddy.
later.
Buddy.
That's Rough Buddy was totally a meme as
I think
well.
that's a
What
later meme.
now it doesn't air until book 3.
Right.
Um that starts to be popular like when Avatar ends, yeah, I guess. But it's not like we're doing that like because it didn't happen until later. But I think that also increased in popularity, yeah. But it was like is I think when that aired, that was seen as one of the funniest lines, I think, right away.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So there are some good ones coming up. Any I'm gonna quickly go through my notes here, but any other topics, Delaney or Beatriz, you guys wanted to get into quickly from these 3 episodes?
I feel like we covered.
Uh,
Let me go. So we talked about
one is Hope has a head full of hair. That baby is hairy.
That happens. That happens sometimes.
Like that is a hairy baby. I was just like,
No, sometimes
whoa.
babies will be born with like all their hair and then it falls out.
Interesting.
Uh,
I think we really made fun of the name Hope. We
Well,
roasted
yeah,
them
because
for
it's
the.
stupid.
yeah.
I
It's
think we really did not like
like
that
I
name.
will say, I think Serpent's past is like extremely ham-fisted. Like
It
it's real
is.
bad.
It's not
Especially
subtle.
at the beginning of the episode where it's like abandoned hope. Like, oh my god, whatever.
The Hope stuff. I think the Hope stuff is pretty emphasis. I think it's good though. It worked for
Yeah.
me.
Oh,
But yeah, it's
I did want to say that I love when Toph like flexes that she's a Beifong.
Yeah.
Like it's really funny. Like when she was like, I need 4 tickets. And she's just like, oh my god, this document is
yes.
so official. Like
Yeah.
top tier.
It's a good callback to Toph's family stuff. Yeah, and so that scene, and then it cuts to Ankatar and Sokka hugging. That image was my avatar and all
Yeah,
that
she's like,
stuff. It
these
was
these
just
imbeciles are my valets. And
yes,
they're like,
and then there, yeah,
so
that
funny.
was my profile pic. Just so you know, that was
So
a good
funny.
one. We talked Toph blind joke. There it is. That's what it'll sound like when one of you spots
That was
it.
great.
On top of Appa. We've been talking about the disability presentation with Toph, and one of the things we said is if it's the character herself making the joke, it's maybe good or not as bad. And so this is probably the preeminent presentation Toph making her own blind joke that we think of, probably,
Yeah. And
from
then
the
also, I
library.
mean, it's so funny in book 3 when she's like, it sounds like a piece of paper.
I don't
Like
remember that. We'll
because
get
he's
there. Look,
showing her, he's like, Toph,
Mhm.
and it's like the wanted poster.
Delaney, you can't reference things. I don't. I have my memory is
Yeah,
not good with
it's the
this.
wanted poster. It's
Yeah.
in the runaway. And
Runaway, yeah.
he's
I
like,
figure
what's
it's
and
the
she's
Runaway.
it sounds
Like
like
a
a
piece
piece
of
of paper.
paper.
I don't know. Like it's so
Yeah.
funny.
Okay.
She
We'll
also
keep
gets
tracking
that
this.
when they find the library, she's like, books don't really do it for me. And then she's like, if you find something I can
Yeah.
listen to, so that was cool.
Yeah. That's
Audiobooks need to make a
early audiobook thing.
yeah.
Early
Yeah.
audio book. She's like, books don't do it for me. And Katara's like, oops.
Guitar having made a very disrespectful blind joke a few episodes earlier is like, oops, yeah. I forgot the rough rhinos are in the desert. I forgot
Yeah.
they came back, and we actually highlight that each is a different weapon specialist. Again, rough rhinos, cool design, but not
And also
nothing
a
to them depth
band.
wise.
Yeah, also a band.
A talented group of
Yeah, that
singers.
was before. Yeah, yeah.
So annoying. So stupid.
Master Fu and Master Yuan's and Fu, they're there. Yep. and the rocks, the magnetic center of the desert. It's some cool. Oh, Toph a rock angel. I think that's kind of an
Yeah.
iconic thing
Yeah.
too.
She's like, oh, thank God. I also like
Um,
when the whole time Sokka's like, I think I'm not high, and then he immediately licks the like side of the cave, and Katara's like, oh my God, you've been tripping balls this whole time,
And you just
decided
lick
this is
the
a good idea."
cave. Yeah, yeah.
Like, and he's like, I'm feeling woozy.
that's
So
good.
funny. Well, also,
Beginning of
when they
Serpent's.
do the
Yes.
cactus juice, it's really funny because Momo like spins in a circle and then just goes right down. Like,
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Good
I love
gif.
Momo.
Beginning of Serpent's Pass. Katara waterbending bomb. We have Katara with her hair down here.
Yes.
Probably an iconic moment as well, following up on book one. I think that they were like waterbending training earlier than this too in some other book two episode. Maybe it was the beginning of Cave of
Yeah.
Lovers.
Okay,
Yeah.
separate. I'm kind of. This is completely random, but when Katara gave Wang Chitong the waterbending scroll, I was like, I feel like you still need this. Are we past
No.
it yet? I mean,
No,
I guess she has
she
it
learned the
memorized
water
at this
whip. She's
point.
okay,
done.
she's done.
Wow.
She's done. She's figured it out.
Off screen, she's learned it. Well, she's a
Also,
master
wait,
now, so
right,
she's
of
learned
course.
this all off
Sokka-
screen.
Sokka's not, and then he's like, "You're not very bright, are you?" So funny.
Yeah, that's good. Culturally, you should maybe keep.
Yeah,
the
I feel like
scroll.
that's a
Now it's
big.
gone. Now it's gone forever.
You
It's
know.
fine. It's fine.
They didn't know it'd go underground.
She can write her own scrolls. It's
true.
fine.
It's true.
We talked about Immigration Lady, the seal of the flying boar. Oh yeah. Oh, so Suki comes in. You don't remember me, and then kisses Sokka, and then you need to be kissed on the cheek to
I know.
remember
Right,
I
so
know.
stupid,
Suki.
so.
For
Like, I know he's an idiot, but
He's an idiot. She's wearing a goofy hat. He can't recognize her.
like, really?
Dumb.
Because he saw her without. Did he see her without makeup?
To be
And
fair, do you think? I mean, imagine you're a child and you're watching the show and you're like, "Who is that?"
yeah, I guess that's what they're tapping into. People who might not remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, Sokka / the show. This is my Suka hatred was coming out in that moment from.
It happens. It's okay.
I think we're checking what else we missed from this episode, but we talked about. I mean, any other Jet thoughts? We'll obviously get.
I hate
into
him.
Jet.
Hate him.
He's fine here. Oh, Jet says I've done things in the past I'm not proud of, and so I need a second chance.
Oh
There you
yeah,
go.
I believe in second chances. I wrote this down because that's what Iro says. He's like, I believe in
Says
second
Iroh.
chances, and in all caps, I'm like, just not for your niece. Anyway,
She's not bitter.
Yeah, no, it's true. He seems to have condemned Azula, yeah. Yeah. I'd say more issue with the show's perspective than Iroh, but Iroh, it's like, I mean, Iroh's the one expressing it.
Who's not happy to see Jet? Hate him. Thank you. He sucks.
I'm interested to see the follow-up to Jet here, because I commented in the original Jet episode, it's like, they like made Jet over the top evil when they could have presented him in a pretty nuanced, morally gray type of way.
I will say I have probably only seen these next like 5 episodes once, so it'll be interesting to see how I
No, you haven't. No, you haven't.
You don't remember anything that happens.
You haven't seen the heights of Ba Sing Se. So let's preview the next. So we're coming up. We'll have the drill.
Oh, that's another meme.
In my mind,
is like there's no war in Ba Sing Se. That's another meme.
Yes. That's a big meme.
I was actually going to tell Dylan that when we do the podcast, that for like 10 minutes, our pictures should just be Judy.
Judy, that'd be good. That'd be good. I will. Oh yeah. So Judy, I think there around the time of the Fire Nation attack, I think that was a huge meme, right? The no war in Ba Sing Se. I feel like it's less of a big meme now.
No, I just
I still see it at times.
It's still a big meme. Okay. That was a meme at the time. I think it was bigger after the show, I would say. Yeah. The war in Ba Sing Se. But yeah, that's probably top 3.
I might be thinking maybe like the later, like I don't know. I don't remember like Lao Guy like at all.
So in my mind, when we you can revisit our original opinions on the podcast in the feed. I think Ba Sing Se was peak Avatar. This was the height of the show, quality wise, in terms of what So we'll see if I think that now in the rewatch. But I loved Ba Sing Se arc. I thought it was so incredible. So it's gonna be very interesting to revisit it. And I don't know how Delaney's only seen it once, considering that.
for me, peak Avatar to me is book 3. That's my favorite. I love
Right. So
book
that was
3.
yeah.
I've watched it a
So what?
lot. The middle of book 2, I have seen the least
Interesting.
somehow.
Yeah. So at the time at the podcast, we love Bossing Say. We're a little bit critical of the direction of book 3, so we'll get into all of that. There you go.
And I
I
didn't
think
come to
we've
From the Spirit World until Korra, so like my
yes,
opinions are different.
yes. Delaney, any last things you want to talk about? Any final thoughts here?
Where's
Appa,
Appa? I want him. So
eventually.
other than that, I just miss Appa. I did watch the 3 episodes and I did enjoy them, other than when they took Appa. It's messed up.
It is messed up.
Messed up.
Beatriz, any last topics or final
As
thoughts?
messed up as it was for them to steal Appa, it created great drama. And you know me, I love chaotic drama mess. So I'm like, you know what? Like, I know that they find him in the end, they get reunited, so it's fine. Give me the tears, give me the fights.
I don't know if I can handle Appa's lost days. It's so bad. It hurts my soul.
I'm excited for it.
Oh,
Will I like it any more than
Oh.
originally? Probably.
poor Appa.
Excited to get into it. Yeah. Anything else, Beatriz?
No, just I was actually like, weirdly enough, I was like, I thought that I would just like the library episode. I generally, because that's really just in terms of imagery, like iconic imagery of Wang Chitong and all that. But the episodes were great. They were so great, and it's just it's just a reminder of just how great this show is. Even after all this time, it's still really solid.
Do we see
Nice.
Wang
Yeah,
Chitong and Korra when Korra turns into a baby?
I
think
think at some point in Korra.
so.
Yeah. At some point in
I
there.
think Janora's in the spirit world. I
Yeah.
think that's what it is.
I guess that's what happened, as we've learned
Sorry,
from
that
consulting
suddenly
the
I
Avatar
remembered
Wiki.
these things while this happened.
Yeah. No, like
It's
I
like a brain blast.
remember that I thought book 2 was the best, but then I looked at the episodes and I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm seeing it, but now that we're revisiting, I'm like, okay, this is another reinforcing. Like, seriously, everything has been so good here. This season 2 has been hitting on all cylinders. And yeah, I think surprisingly to me, Serpent's Pass has been one of the highlights, and Desert and Library good as well. So there you go. More good stuff from book 2, and we're gonna get into Bossing Say. We're gonna get to the drill.
Where there's no war.
And
There's no war.
There's no war.
No war.
All peace.
Yeah, we're right. Drill, City of Walls and Secrets, Tales and Bossing Say. That's the next one. City of Walls and Secrets, always thought of as one of my top episodes. Tales of Bossing Say, interested to see how I think of it this time. So no Appa's Lost Days next. That's for Delaney.
Oh, thank God.
Okay.
Jesus.
Thank you guys for listening. Let us know your thoughts on anything we talked about. You can leave a comment on YouTube, on overlyanimated.com, or wherever you are listening. If you enjoyed this, you can consider becoming a patron. That's the best way to support this From the Spirit World Rewatch series. Patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to our current patrons, especially our patron podcast, Caroline. And thanks as always to our patron executive producers, Steve, Michael, and Phoenician. Patrons get early access to the From the Spirit World Rewatch episodes. I will warn, I don't know if we're going to be able to continue weekly through the rest of book 2 if you're listening to this as they're coming out. So there might be a gap. So we will see. People been busy from the FTSW hosts, been having trouble getting people. So that's why there's like a huge gap between these two. But I just decided to put out the ones we had, even though we're not finished yet. So we will see when the rest of book 2 is out. But thank you guys for listening whenever you are. And what are we going to end on here?
Bring back Appa. Appa. Appa.
Yeah.
Appa. Appa.
Okay. We'll end on chanting Appa.
Appa.
I feel like we didn't even get into it that much in the podcast, but that's okay. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Appa. Bring back Appa.
Appa. Appa.
Appa.